Wah. Wah. Oh, now my mic's too loud. What the heck? It was too soft before, now it's too loud now. What the hecky? Dang, I can't. I wish I could just eat spaghetti all day, but I got a stream to start. That's some good spaghetti, though. I was munching on it. I was listening to a song that Ghosty had sent me. And yeah, I think it sets the tone. I think it sets the tone for what we're gonna be going over for today. But hello, everyone. Hello, how you guys doing? How you guys doing? Happy Friday. End of the work week, end of the school week. Even though we got Saturday school too. But let's see who we got here before we get started and talk about this cool song. And maybe I'll eat some more spaghetti. Actually, you know what? I should wash this down with water before I like choke on something. Give me a second. Oh yeah. Okie dokie. Let's see who we got here. Shortly before I started stream, we got a follow from Erratic Enigma. Nice to have you here. Thanks for joining the class. But we also have Saribot, our rock, and we got Matthew. And Mega Bronson got their sticker. Hello, hello. And Ghosty, you got your sticker. And you're exploding. And then, yeah, I was editing spaghetti with my mouth as I was listening to the song. It's called Reagan by Killer Mike. Like I said, I think it sets the tone for what we're going to be talking about today. Folky got your sticker as well. Fugubi, hello. You got your sticker. Too quiet, too loud. I hope a little girl doesn't come into your house and vandalize your audio setup like the Three Bears. That dang Goldilocks again. Messing with my audio. Messing with my mic settings on OBS. How bear she. How bear she. But alright, with that said, hold on, let me recalibrate my tracking, and then let's get to class. Wah! Wah! Oh yeah, let's put on some musica. Actually, we can put on the song that I was just listening to. Well, let's put on the song that I was just listening to. Killer Mike. Speaking of Mike, today is the day that the Michael Jackson biopic comes out. I'm pretty excited to watch it whenever I do get to watch it, but it's here! It's here! In POG form. Wait, is this song not on Spotify? Killer Mike song? Oh no, he just has like a big discography. I was like, there's no way, right? There's no way. I wish I could sing that one, but there's a word that I cannot sing in that song. Yeah, no, same. Same. Right, you know what? I should just Google the name of the song instead of trying to find it in, Here we go. Found it. Okay, but otherwise, hello everyone, hello. It's me, Babinka Bear, your local Sun Bear art history teacher and educational streamer. And today we are doing our decade study. Whoop-a-poo-poo! Something that I keep on looking forward to every 2 weeks. Our decade study, where we, for the sake of getting good at Time Guesser, try to get good at recognizing certain styles, art, and designs from different decades. And we have already worked ourselves all the way to the 1980s. So I do have, we could still do some yaps, but also we can also get right into the swing of things. But just as a little preview of what's to come, I looked into current events alongside some artistic stuff, aka like aesthetics, interior and graphic design, art movements such as neo-expressionism, neo-pop art, computer and digital art. All of these are really cool. A lot of them do also intersect with some art movements we discussed when we were talking about the 1970s a couple of weeks ago, fashion, and car design. So I looked into that. Also a little bit of pop culture too. So we'll also touch on 1980s pop culture. And we're getting into, I'm getting more and more excited for each one of these decade studies, because while it's so fun to learn about all the decades and all of like their little nuances, all of their like art movements, the fashion, the current events of the time, the closer we get to the present, the more there's I think this just makes sense, right? The more, I guess, like emotionally invested I get, because there's a little bit of familiarity to it, where it's like, oh man, in the 1980s, I wasn't alive during that time, but my parents were. And my parents, that's when they like were experiencing their like 20s and like early 30s, or I think 20s mostly. So this was their party time. In fact, just a little preview of what's to come when we get into fashion. I even included the parentals into it, and also a shot of my mom, so we can look at the fashion of the time, according to Filipino Americans living during that time. So yeah, that's the plan for today. That's the plan. Bears! But yeah. So, a lot happened in the 1980s, but before we get into that, we could do our yaps. We could do our usual little yap session for about 15 to 30 minutes. Or, you know what? We're almost getting into 15 minutes. I feel like we just started, though. But yeah, we can yap a little bit. That paper cup. Yeah, the paper cup, right, with that design, that familiar design, right? Like I said, we're getting into the realm of like familiarity for many of us. I'm really excited for 2 weeks from now when we do the 90s, because then I'm gonna be able to actually like chime in on things that I experienced. Albeit, I was just a cub during the 90s, so, you know, there's a lot of stuff that likely went over my head as but a little cub, right? There's a lot of stuff that like maybe there was a recession that I missed out on, or there's a lot of things happening that my parents were worried about, but me myself, I was like, I'm watching The Simpsons and I'm watching Digimon. And what did I watch as a kid? Barney, I love you, you love me. Let's get together and kill Barney. So yeah, there might have been some things that were happening in the 90s that I was completely unaware of, due to the simple fact that I was a cub. I was but a child, you know, especially the early 90s where I was barely sentient, you know? Like, it's funny, I was looking into this because I was like thinking back on like what my earliest memories were, and the whole phenomenon, the whole phenomenon of, I guess it's called like child amnesia or infant amnesia, where like you can't remember anything past the age of like, or not past, but like before the age of like 2 or 3, right? I think my earliest memory is actually when I was like 4 or 5. Mika missed out on an opportunity to expand her stock portfolio when she was 8. I did miss out on that. See, I should have known better. I should have been able to what's it called? Invest in a little known company called GameStop and or Apple. No, actually Apple already like was a thing. Like Apple products, Macintosh, right? Trying to think of like what would have like arisen out of the 90s that I could have made like big bucks on. Big binka bucks, you know? The year you gain sentience. So yeah, we're not there yet with the 1980s, but like I said, my parents were alive then. I think they were in the US by this point as well. My earliest memory was at 3 or thereabouts. It's a crazy interesting thing with the amnesia. It is like, unfortunately, like I can't mention what it is my earliest memory was, because it's very local to something that happened in my neck of the woods. I might have mentioned it here or there on stream, but like it was like a very specific event that was like my earliest memory. But after that, I think I do have memories of, oh, you know what? Kindergarten. No, preschool. I have memories of preschool. I remember being on a slide out in the back. I remember like playing around in the like playground. And it's funny because our the place where my mom put me in for preschool was a church. But it was like a small little like chapel that I guess happened to have like a little like early learning program or something like that. So I vaguely remember like playtime. I would always play with like the little horse dolls. And then there was also like a bus. There was a bus, and I don't know how, but I was able to fit the horse doll into the bus. And I made it look like the horse was driving the bus. Brayer horses? I'm not sure. What are brayer horses? I know what a brayer is. I know that that's an art thing. What is a brayer horse? Let me look this up. Brayer horses. Oh! Oh, they're figurines. You know what? It's very possible. It's very possible that it was these. Very possible. I think I still even have a picture of myself as like a little cub, and I was just like, I guess I was imagining that the horses were driving the bus, you know? By that point, I had already known that animals can do things like drive buses. You know, foreshadowing, handy foreshadowing for when I would drive the bus for you guys. So, let's see, I think that's as far back as I can remember is preschool. And then one time, Zakun, start running your way. Look, I fixed the phone. Did you guys see it? I fixed the phone. I think I fixed quite a couple of things too. Like, I tried to fix the raid message thing, but we are gonna find out. We're gonna find out when I actually raid out tonight. But, I tried to just do like a lot of fixing on the side. And one little thing that I don't know if anyone noticed yet, but, I last minute put in another redeem. Last minute, like literally I was getting ready for stream at around like 5:30, and then I got ready really quickly and I got bored. And I was like, alright, I'll just watch some stream. And then I was like, you know what? I actually have some time to work on, oh, not that one. That is a new one though. But look at me, I'm big. I'm Big Binka. That's one of them. So the Embiggen the Bink and the Shrink the Bink. That one was added just yesterday. I added one more. There we go. But it's funny because like now it doesn't, and that kind of makes sense with my size right now. Summon the legs. Look, it's the long legs Binka. It's the, hey! Why am I small? I just love sulfuric acid. Why am I small now? I was chillin'. I was chillin' being big. And now you're seeing that the long legs are an illusion. You're saying that it's an illusion. It's just a pair of legs that I picked up off the street. But yeah, what's fun with that redeem is that it's a toggle. As in, like, if you redeem it again, you can take away the legs. However, oh no, the redeems are overlaying on each other. Whose did you steal? She set the belt to Wumbo. I did. But yeah, I'm gonna be staying angry like this for like a minute because that's how I programmed it. For as long as I'm small, I will be angry. I'll be mad. But yeah, the long legs Binka. That's the newest one. There we go. We're good now. We're all good now. Look, see, is the illusion is does the illusion pass? Does it look like it's my legs? I know it doesn't quite look like my legs, but I think that's what I wanted to do, is to make it look kind of janky, kind of like I really just pulled these legs off of the street. Wait, let me put this down a little bit. There we go. It really does look like you stole someone's legs. I just found these on the street. What if you stole George's legs as a joke? That would be funny. Wait, maybe I'm gonna write this down on my notepad. What if like it just randomizes between different legs from all of my friends, you know, like Owen's legs, Saku's legs, Cielo's legs. How would I do grill legs for Matthew though? Ghosty's legs, right? Beans' legs. I just steal everybody's legs. I'm gonna write this down. Cycle leg redeem. Can't steal what I don't have. It's just bars with wheels. That one, yeah, that's Matthew's, right? That's Matthew's. So yeah, that is an idea. I could cycle through people's legs. I could steal Mega Bronson's legs. I think what's fun with Beans's, Mega Bronson's, and Folks is that, like, I could just recolor the asset that I have down here. Like, I could just change the color, and it would still make sense. But then I'm gonna have to be a little bit more creative with, like, the human legs, right? And then Matthew's. So yeah, the possibilities are endless. The possibilities are endless. There's long legs Binka. She's real. She's real. And she's not as cursed as the old version. The only thing is the legs are now covering the music. That's the only thing. But actually, I did want to play some 80s music, so let's actually do that. All Out 80s on Spotify. There we go. Purple Rain. She's real and she can hurt you. I can steal your legs. It's funny what you find on the side of the street next to the school, next to the bungalow. But yeah, so that's what I was working on. I literally made this and like programmed it into SAMMI within like the 30 minutes between like 5:30 and like 6 o'clock. So it's doable. It's definitely doable. And this weekend I might want to work on other redeems. I know I should save a lot of these for the possible subathon I might want to have in a couple of weeks, but I can't help it. I can't help it. I'm like, what is it, Jimmy the Squealer? I just love squealing. The one thing that and this is the last thing I'll talk about before we like get started properly, but the summer's coming up. My work is starting to slow down. Emphasis on starting, because next week I'm busy and then the week afterwards I'm busy. But after those weeks I'm getting a little bit more free. Might start taking commissions. Maybe. It's not for sure yet because I need to see what kind of time I have, but I might start taking some commissions. The creative inspiration strikes when it does. Yeah, and you want to like strike while it's hot, because sometimes like I know I have all these ideas and I just don't have the energy to like execute on it. Cause like the long legs Binko one was like something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and lo and behold I did it in 30 minutes. It's funny because like I'm trying to like be better on like certain tasks. So I put it as a task on my Google Calendar so that my phone will also alert me of like, oh, you set out this time to do this task, to work on this art piece, right? So like I try to do that, and then what ends up happening is I'm like, I'll move that to tomorrow. I feel like rotting today. I feel like rotting on the couch today. So the moments where the creative inspiration does strike, you gotta strike while it's hot. Good evening, George. Little late with the leg on the desk meme, but it's fine. What do you mean? We're back to 2020 VTubing? No, but mine's funny because it's not sexual. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Not that there's anything wrong with the sexual ones, but look. It's a pair of fluffy legs. I found them off the side of the street. Matthew even said that, you know, what if I steal other people's legs? What if I steal yours, George? What if I steal yours? You ever think about that? So yeah, that's what's been on my mind lately. Is I think I'm in the creative inspiration phase right now. So I might want to make some more creative things with my stream, such as another stream like scene. Is this your show and tell today, teacher? The legs you found on the side of the road? Yes, this is my show and tell. Do you guys like it? Do you guys like the legs I found? Does the illusion, like, is it illusory enough? Does it look like it's my legs? Oh my gosh, wait, what's going on with that emote? Not the peggle. But yeah, do you guys like it? Like I said, you can also toggle it. You can toggle it. Though just know that I did put a limitation that you can only summon and like turn it off once per stream. Or like each individual user can only like turn it off and on once per stream. So if like, I think, wait, who actually summoned these legs? Was it Matthew? Summoned the legs? Who summoned the legs? It was Matthew. If Matthew were to make them disappear, that's it for the amount of times that you can redeem it, but other people can still redeem it. Yeah. What if Steel redeem for the legs and Binkubs run around with them only if near the teach? That'd be funny. I just have to figure out how to do that. That's the thing with like stream avatars, is that like it's a very specific program that like I'm sure there are really cool things that you could do with it. I just have to figure out how. I just gotta figure out how. Hold on, because I ate really, like, oily spaghetti, I do have to clear my throat. Give me a second. I like the idea that it's the arms of a puppet that you've slaughtered. Oh no. Well, there is the long legs Binka meme is partially based off of like these really long legged bears. Wait. Long legs teddy bear. It's this one. I forgot what stream it was, but Randon of all people was the one to like tell me about this. Right? These are the legs that I found on the side of the road. I just dyed them purple. I just made them purple, and now they're here. Isn't that neat? Isn't that cool? But yeah, that's a cool emote. Whose is that? Ginji? He's pretty cool. Pretty cool. But yeah, so with all that out of the way, with the legs out and about, I think it's about time for us to start our decade study. Shall we say? Let me get another drink of water, actually. Okay, let's get right into the swing of things, right? I would like to yap more, but because of all the stuff that we're liable to yap about for this stream, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm alert. I'm gonna start draft 2 of the book. Let's freaking go! Let's freaking go! Good luck. Good luck. Happy writing. Happy writing. And as always, I'm excited. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Just can't hide it. And then I'll also follow up with some of our messages as well. I know I haven't been good at responding, but I will follow up. But yeah, with that, let's go ahead and get started with our decade study. Once again, we are going into the 1980s, and once again, this is all to get good at time guesser, but also just good to get kind of the vibe for each decade. So the name of the game for this one, at least in terms of like US current events, is Reagan, the devil. You know him, you don't love him. I guess depending on your place on the political spectrum, but I feel like I've made my own politics pretty obvious by this point. But in terms of American politics, and I believe other parts of the world too, because by this point you also have Margaret Thatcher as well, but in the West at the very least, there's a dominance of conservatism and free market economics. So in the US specifically, Ronald Reagan became the president in 1981. And while Jimmy Carter was the president for like the earliest half, or the earliest like years of the 80s, and George H.W. was the latter half, this like decade was basically dominated by Reagan and like his presidency, at least in the US, but also kind of like influencing other parts of the world. So what did I write here? Reagan's presidency was marked by policies that I put a typo here. I guess marked by policies that included economic deregulation, leading to a reduction in unemployment and reduced inflation, which is, I tried to be, like, I am very biased. I think I'll just say right here and now that I am very biased. Like I said, you guys know my politics, but I did try to see, like, well, a lot of people on, like, the other end of the political spectrum like him for a reason, right? And one of those things is that by the end of his presidency, there was a reduction in unemployment. There was reduced inflation. Those are all good things. But the reason why they came about is because of his policies on economics, on kind of like laissez-faire, deregulated economics in terms of like no more like lack of, yeah, tax cuts as well. So no regulation on like what companies could and couldn't do, or businesses rather. So this did also, I don't know, lead to like just a whole bunch of other things, such as widening the wealth gap, increased defense spending, cut funding to social programs, especially food stamps, and welfare. My high school AP Poli Sci teacher loved Reagan for that exact reason. Interesting. Yeah, like I know that a lot of Republicans and conservatives definitely like hero worship him, and it's like, yeah, if you are part of the group that benefited from a lot of these tax cuts and a lot of this like government deregulation, then like, yeah, it makes sense, right? It makes sense. But unfortunately, like a lot of it, there was a cost to it. And in many ways, a lot of what had happened during his presidency has like very long-reaching consequences that are still in effect nowadays, such as this emphasis on the war on drugs, which at first glance, kind of like the DARE program in the 90s, is a good thing. Yeah, you don't want people on drugs, right? Like drugs are bad, okay? Okay. However, this like emphasis on the war of drugs would actually disproportionately affect minority groups, such as like Black communities or any like communities of color, as well as like kind of like gave a kind of like not an excuse, but like it did lead to like police militarization and this idea of like even if, you know, like even if there were cops that were against any kind of like militarization or targeting minority groups, there was a lot of incentive to do so, right? I'd like to congratulate drugs for winning the war on drugs. Drugs are bad, okay? So, like, it's, even though this message is, like, a good one, and that's kind of, like, how he sold it as well, the war on drugs, that, like, keep our youth drug-free, right? Like, just say no. A lot of it would disproportionately affect minority groups. Another thing was, like, mass incarceration, because now you do have a labor supply out of things like prisons. And you had these jails that were, or these prisons and jails that were more focused on stuffing it with bodies, you know, stuffing it with people over actually trying to reform the people in those prisons, right? There was more incentive. They got more money out of just having more people in there. And making sure that people came back to that prison, right? Rather than reforming them, rather than focusing on like making sure that the people that are in there, you know, are, you know, sorry for their crimes or even in prison for a reason, right? Like for a good reason. It's one of those things where it's like, I forgot if the 3 strikes rule was also like during this time, or if it was like, you know, established earlier. Hello, Peck School. Hello. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, I got caught. But just this idea of like the 3 strikes rule of like, if you get sent to, I think it's something like if you either like get caught or get imprisoned for like 3 separate like crimes, then you could potentially like go to jail for like, or sorry, go to prison for like a much longer time, including life in prison, right? However, like, what's the specifications on like what are the 3 strikes, you know? Because if it's like, oh, you got sent to prison because of handling marijuana, right? Or having marijuana on you, then like does that also mean that like just because it's like 3 times you got caught with marijuana, you now get life in prison? Like you get the same amount of time as someone who like committed a murder, right? So I don't know. It's a lot. And of course, as with all of these discussions, it's very nuanced. There is some nuance in it, but at the same time, a lot of these consequences last into the modern day. And then another kind of big thing that Reagan is known for is that he broke a air traffic controllers strike in 1981. So these air traffic controllers were striking for better working conditions, better wages, as many like strikes, you know, do. You know, Los Bincos just had a teacher strike, rather they prevented a teacher strike. But basically it was this idea of like the teachers are striking because they don't have enough resources, they don't have enough wages, and the working conditions aren't the best. So they were striking, but it was prevented by negotiations with the contracts and with increasing their wages. and other like beneficial things, right? So that worked out fine, but with the air traffic controller strike in 1981, they were basically like not working because they wanted better wages and better working conditions. And instead of like leaving time for any kind of negotiation, Ronald Reagan had kind of like sent them an ultimatum of like, if you don't return to work within 48 hours, you are fired. Like you know, like you can't don't even bother coming back to work. You are officially unemployed. And because it was the president doing this, it kind of like signaled to businesses that strikes aren't worth ish. They're worth nothing, basically. Like, it doesn't matter if your employees strike, because it could just be easily like toppled like this. You could just fire them. You could just fire them. And what had happened is that, like, when all of these air traffic controllers were fired, when they didn't come back to work at the end of the 48 hours, their positions were filled by other air traffic controllers, either like retired ones that came back, or like ones that weren't part of the union, stuff like that. So ultimately that strike failed. And this kind of like set a chain reaction of sorry, got phlegm in the throat. This set up a chain reaction of businesses being like, oh, I don't have to listen to strikes. You know, like, I don't have to listen to these demands. I could just keep on operating as I have been and save money while doing so, because then I don't have to increase the wages. So this, like, this made quite the blow to any kind of unionization efforts. I forgot what the statistic was, but I did see a video that discussed that, like, prior to this, like, anywhere between like a third of all employed people in the US were part of a union. Because it just makes sense. Like, unions are the ones who kind of like bargain on better working conditions and better wages. Why wouldn't you want to join it? But now there's all this like talk of like, oh, you know, unions can be predatory and unions don't work, they're ineffective and all of that. So yeah. So a lot of this is kind of, once again, like a consequence of the Reagan era. So aside from that, we also saw the final decade of the Cold War. Reagan was also more aggressive to the USSR. I believe he was the one that had that famous, like, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. But also Gorbachev had this policy of glasnost, which was transparency. And I forgot what perestroika was, unfortunately. We could look it up right now. Perestroika. As you can see, I copied a lot of this from the wiki on the 1980s. So let's do a little bit of research right now. Perestroika. He hated walls. He hated it. Was a political reform movement within the Communist Party of the Soviet Union during the late 1980s, widely associated with Mikhail Gorbachev and his transparency policy. Perestroika literally means restructuring, referring to the restructuring of the political economy of the Soviet Union in an attempt to end the era of stagnation. Ah, okay. So this was a restructuring, and this just so happened to happen during a time where there was a lot of widespread nationalism of a lot of countries that were either next to or within the Soviet Union. So for example, a lot of people nowadays might use the term of like former Soviet Union country. This is referring to a lot of countries that were part of the Soviet Union, and that includes places like Uzbekistan, where my partner's or Beans is from, you know, like Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, but also Ukraine and Belarus. I believe Armenia too. Let's actually take a look at what used to be part of the Soviet Union. Actually, this does not give us anything. Not the Russian flag emote. I need like a map. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So these are all the countries that used to be part of the Soviet Union. So you had Russia, it's kind of the big one. You also have Ukraine, Belarus, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Georgia, Azerbaijan. So that's over here in the Caucasus. Yeah, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Lithuania, which is over here in the Baltic region. Moldavia, which I believe is... Yeah, that is his own country. I was like, which one is Moldavia again? Latvia is also part of the Baltics. I only know that because of Hitalia. Kyrgyzstan is part of Central Asia. Tajikistan is part of Central Asia. Armenia is part of the Caucasus. Turkmenistan, Central Asia, and then Estonia. There's another one that is in the Baltic region. So basically, a whole bunch of like adjacent Baltic region countries, a whole bunch of Central Asian countries, and then some in the Caucasus, and then Belarus and Ukraine. So all of these used to be part of one entity, which was the Soviet Union. And now they're their own places. They're their own countries now. So during this time, there was a lot of nationalism, this idea of like, we should not be part of the Soviet Union, we should be our own thing, right? Another thing that was kind of like contributing to the slow decline of the USSR during this time alongside Mikhail Gorbachev's policies was the Soviet-Afghan War. Now, I'm gonna be really honest with you guys. I didn't do a lot of research on the Soviet-Afghan War. It just seemed like it was a very large conflict at the time. But I think what was really interesting is that during this time, the CIA support alongside Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and a whole bunch of like Muslim nations, they backed Afghanistan for this one. They supported the Islamist Mujahideen resistance against the USSR. Because I always wondered, like, you know, back when Osama bin Laden was like a big name, people were saying that like, oh, he was armed by the US, you know, like he came into power because of the US. I suspect that is around this time during the Soviet-Afghan War. Once again, for those that know a little bit better, feel free to correct me because I did not do a lot of research, admittedly. At this point, I was like, I want to get to the art. Like, I want to get to the art. But at the same time, like, all of this is very important. They were proxy agents for the West. There you go. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you. So yeah, like a lot of this kind of like sets the tone for like a lot of things that were happening at the time, which does go into things like fashion, goes into things like car design and art movements. So there's that. The Berlin Wall would fall in 1989. So that is still included in here, but the Soviet Union itself would not fall until 1990, or is it 1991? I forget. Once again, I was born in 1990, but I was not sentient until much later. Right? Hello, Gojikins. There were many such activities around the world via the CIA. Yeah, I heard that, I don't know if this was around the same time, but the CIA also fooled a lot of Filipinos into thinking that vampires were real. You know, like there's like a vampire, like creature in the Philippines called the manananggal. It's the thing that I think I probably went over this in another stream, but like they're the long-tongued creatures that try to slip up like babies out of mama's tummies. They are? Oh no. No, wait. We know one. Well, he's dead now, but as much as he denies it. Vesper Noir. Like the US has also given weapons to the Kurds in Rojava only to repeatedly betray them, as one does, right? Well, not as one does, as the US is usually known to do, right? Okay, now I'm getting worried that at least 2 Babinkovs are saying that vampires are real. I'm getting a little worried. Like, how do you know? How do you know? I don't even know my blood type. I would like to keep that blood type, please. The ones that split from the upper and lower torso and fly at night. Yes, so those are manananggal. Those are like these vampire witch thingies in Filipino folklore. So the CIA, in order to curb communist like support, because there are communist groups in the Philippines, they try to kind of like do a psyop with these like manananggal vampire things. I thought it was common knowledge that vampires are real. Like, I mean, how can you be sure that they're not real? Have you ever not met one? Have I ever not met? Have I ever not? I have not met. Wait. Can't say that I have. I remember when I was in middle school, I met a lot of people that were really into that kind of thing. And in high school was like the pinnacle of Twilight. So there's that. But yeah, so yeah, as Gojikins said, the CIA was just doing a lot of things during this time. A lot of things. So yeah, the Berlin Wall would fall in late 80s, but the USSR itself would not fall until the early 90s. So we'll probably cover that when we get to the 90s as well. Alongside all of this, there was also the AIDS epidemic and then the spread of the global warming theory. So the AIDS epidemic, we are going to see a lot of, like, in terms of some art movements and just like how it affected a lot of people from the day to day. And this is another thing that a lot of people kind of like note on Reagan's presidency, is that he barely even acknowledged it, like barely. And it was only when like a fellow actor, because for those who don't know, Ronald Reagan was an actor before he was president. It was only when a fellow actor had passed away due to complications from AIDS. So that is one of those things where like a lot of people blame him for not addressing and not like helping out with this epidemic, because it was one of those things where it's like, why would he help a disease that disproportionately affects gay people or like low income people, right? Why would he do that when that's exactly who he doesn't care for and would hope dies, you know? So because of that, like a lot of people did like end up suffering a lot from the AIDS epidemic. We're even going to be talking about someone today that died from complications related to AIDS. And I will say that, like I said, usually when we get into decades that are getting closer to the modern day, there is a sense of familiarity because now, like, you know, you have personal connections with it. My parents grew up around this time, and they had a couple of gay friends in Los Vincos that I remember very fondly as a child, only to find out in my adulthood that they had passed away due to complications from AIDS. So this is something that isn't just in the 80s, it's something that is still far-reaching, just with a lot of things that I had mentioned about Reagan, right? Like, there's so many things that happened here in the 80s, but they are still affecting us to this day. Binka's vision is primarily based on double, triple negatives. Kinda, sorta, yeah. Like, I can't see the quadruple negatives anymore. Yeah, it's sad, because, like, I found out, like, I think in my late 20s that, like, I asked my mom, like, oh yeah, I had like an uncle. And it's funny because other than, I do have like one cousin who is gay, and we kind of like knew he was gay ever since he was like a kid. But other than that, like, the first time I had encountered someone of the LGBTQ plus community was my parents. Yeah, like my parents, I think I mentioned this before. They used to do a lot of drugs, and specifically they used to do it with a lot of the gay titos and titas in Los Pincos, and that was kind of like the main way that they knew them. But these were also, you know, like family friends. So I do have like fond memories of like going over to like my gay tito's like hair salon, or rather my parents would go just to hang out, and then they would take me with them. And I remember like that's the first time I met like multiple gay people. And then there was one time where my parents were like chilling with my tito in his apartment, and then someone comes through the door, and it's this beautiful woman. And like, she's gorgeous. Like, I remember like being like, oh my god, she's like drop dead gorgeous. She has like fabulous hair, fabulous makeup. And then I remember being so surprised when the voice that came out of that person was a little deeper than I expected, right? Back then I didn't like kind of understand what was happening. Now I know that that was someone who was either trans or just preferred to wear to present, you know, more femininely. But I remember back then being like, whoa, like, this is a possibility. This is a thing that people can do, right? So yeah, like I remember that, and then I found out later on eventually that like a lot of them had unfortunately ended up passing away due to complications. I want to make a lot of jokes right now, but I'll stop myself. Oh yeah, it's rough because it's very recent, right? The wound is still a little bit there. It's healing, but it's there. It's funny because speaking about jokes, if you guys remember like a couple of streams ago, okay, just one. Can't believe Babinka was such a bigot. Oh my gosh, I was a cub. I was a cub. I didn't know. I didn't even know. Anyway. Let's see. It wasn't a bigot. I was a oh my god, dude, every time I go over to my mom's place, she's been feeling very nostalgic these past couple of years, and she's always like reminiscing on things I did as a babe or as a cub, right? Some embarrassing things, and she keeps telling me about this time. Oh my god, it's like every time I visit too, she's like, oh my gosh, when you were little, there was this one time where we were in an elevator, and harpsichord enjoyer, hello. There's this one time where we were in an elevator and you were just a cub, and then suddenly this person comes in and they are a little person. She didn't use that term, but I think you know which term I mean. This little person, and I looked at you and I squeezed your hand really hard because I knew you were gonna say something. I knew for a fact that you were gonna say something. And it's like, wait, if I'm just a cub and I don't know any better, is that really such a bad thing that I would question, like, oh, why does this person look like that? You know? But just the fact that my mom was like preemptively like squeezing my hand, like, don't say anything. It's like, but I'm just a cub. I wouldn't have known anything. In fact, that's a great teaching moment, mother. That's a great teaching moment for you to teach me that people have different body types. Anyway. Enough about me, cub me being not a bigot, but a cub. Anyway, oh yeah, so in addition to the AIDS epidemic, there was also the spreading of this theory called global warming. And I'm not saying theory because it's been disproven or because I don't believe in it, but because the definition of global warming has now expanded into this umbrella idea of climate change. So, but this is the first time that people were talking about this phenomenon of global warming, the fact that like man-made factors are like the reason for the temperature going as high as it's going, basically, that the earth is getting warmer little by little. And it's because it's not a natural thing. It's not like oh, the earth has its natural ebbs and flows, and you know, we're gonna get an ice age soon, that kind of thing. Because a lot of people like to make that argument of like, oh, if you look at like prehistoric times, it would get hotter all the time and then colder all the time. That's just how the earth be. And kind of dismissing the fact that like some of this is caused by human factories and chemicals in the atmosphere and basically man-made reasons, right? So that was kind of like the beginning of like global warming as a theory. However, now that's been kind of now we're calling it climate change, because a lot of people were also saying stuff like, well, now it's the coldest it's ever been in a while. How can global warming be happening if it's really cold where I live? You know? So now it's just this idea of like, well, it's not just that the earth is getting hotter, it's that all around like the climate is being changed due to man-made reasons, right? I would say I had a similar scenario, but mom was with me, an older bro. Mom looked at me like, don't say anything. My bro went full uncensored and said I could beat them in a fight. That's crazy. That's insane. Dang. Well, once again, kids are curious. Kids are curious about things, right? Cubs are curious. I know you cubs are curious. So let's see, in addition to this, there was also unfortunately the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. So this was a I'm gonna say it now, he probably couldn't. I mean, yeah, like, especially if it's like a fully grown adult, even if they were a little person, you know? Like, I think they could take a kid in a fight. Have you seen what's it called? Why am I forgetting his name? Peter Dinklage? Didn't know this chat was so based. Oh my gosh. I still need. Oh, you're reminding me. I need the little like squeegee bottle. Little squeegee bottle redeem. Oh yeah, Challenger. Real shame. Yeah, exactly. Galahughes, hello. We're talking about the 1980s. We just finished talking about how Ronald Reagan is the devil. So that I think that's a good summary for everything so far. Challenger, this was a space shuttle launch in which a faulty O-ring, a faulty part, had unfortunately led to it exploding only a couple of seconds after liftoff. So it's very unfortunate. A lot of people died during that one. But similarly, this was also the time of the Chernobyl disaster in Ukraine. There is a mini-series that is out about this this incident. Basically, there was a nuclear meltdown where a lot of radioactive particles were kind of like inadvertently released into the air, causing a lot of like long-term damage to the widespread area, as well as the scientists and workers that were within the facility itself. So I have heard though, like me and Beans did watch the miniseries about this, but I hear that a lot of people that survived that event were like, they exaggerated a lot. They dramatized a lot, including like the effects of what happens when you're exposed to radioactive particles and stuff. Because if you watch that, it's like horrendous, like what happens to the people that are exposed to it. It's really sad to watch. But apparently, like, people are saying that, like, it's not quite as gruesome as they make it out to be in the series, even though it is, like, people did die due to it. If I remember right, that faulty part was caused by someone who was ignored. Yes, exactly, exactly. It bears repeating. It bears repeating that, like, someone had caught the fact that there was a faulty O-ring. Someone reported it, but it was ignored. And ultimately it led to the Challenger disaster happening. So because of that, you do see a lot of policies, especially with NASA, to make sure that everything is spick and spam, you know, that everything is like, is at 100%. There's no chance that anything could fail. And it's why, for example, the Artemis 2 mission was delayed many times. Because they wanted to make sure that all the parts were working properly. If there's even a smidge of any of the parts being faulty, they gotta send it back. They gotta do it all over again because, like, and they gotta delay the launch because they just want to make sure that people come back alive. So yeah, the sounds work on that show is amazing. Pure stress. Oh, for real. Yes, Gojikins. The Chernobyl series, that one was like so stressful. It bears repeating. It gets a little funny after that. After that happened, Mom looked like I committed the same crime as bro, and he got away with it, while I got treated like why I didn't stop him. No, oh man, sorry that happened. But kids are always curious, you know. What else happened during this time? Advances in genetic and digital technology with designer babies. The reason why I put this is, like, I hadn't really heard about, like, I've heard the term designer babies, but apparently, like, there were enough advances in genetic technology that, like, you could control certain genes. Not all of them, of course, but there was a baby that was purportedly born where, like, their genes were manipulated in such a way that it guaranteed that it would be a girl, for example. So, like, they couldn't quite control things like hair color, eye color, and what kinds of genes are expressed, but they could at the very least control, like, the gender of the baby. But the thing is, I hadn't heard too much about that afterwards, you know? I haven't really heard much in terms of this idea of, like, designer babies with manipulated genes, other than in Gundam. You know, new types and whatnot. This is also the time of gestational surrogacy, meaning that if you had a healthy egg and a healthy sperm, or a fertilized egg, but your body wasn't able to support developing and birthing a baby, you could put that fertilized egg into the uterus of another woman or another person with a uterus, and they would be able to be a surrogate for that baby. So it would still biologically, genetically be your baby, but it was grown and kind of like supported by another person's womb. So good to mention. Exactly. Star Trek also had a little situation about genetically engineered people. Oh, interesting. Interesting. Is it New Generation or is it the classic one? Because I keep saying I want to get into the New Generation, but I just never have the time. But me and Beans did watch a couple of episodes and we dug it. Global events that happened to economic growth in Japan and West Germany. Here's the fall of the Berlin Wall over here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Fall of the Berlin Wall. You had, like, the city pop vibes in Japan because they had a lot of economic prosperity during this time. There was, unfortunately, on the other side of things, there was famine in a lot of developing countries, such as Ethiopia. Or I think, was it Ethiopia? Basically, there was this concert Live Aid that was meant to send food and supplies to countries in famine. You also had the Tiananmen Square protests in China. This was during a time where there was a lot of change going from following the death of Mao Zedong, or Mao Zedong, right? So this was like kind of like the resulting changes after that. Let's see. Superior ability breeds superior ambition. Oh my gosh. Negative 1,000 social credits score. It's something that happened pre-original series, if I remember right. Something the series called the Eugenics War, which ended with a Federation-wide ban on genetic engineering. It gets brought up a few times in a few series. Oh, interesting. Okay. Cool. During the 1980s, you also saw the first Intifada, which is a large-scale protest by the Palestinians against Israeli military presence in the Gaza Strip. And once again, this is another thing that bears repeating with stuff that's happening nowadays. In terms of the Philippines, I did mention that like it was around this time that my parents came to the US. And during this time in the Philippines, there was what's called the People Power Revolution. I do know that we have an ad break coming up in a minute, but I think we should be able to finish this point. So this was kind of like the overthrow of the 20-year dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos. If you guys recall from the 1970s decade study, he had declared martial law, meaning that like he was basically in full control of the Philippines until whenever the heck he wanted to stop it. And he didn't stop it. So the people actually had to revolt against Ferdinand Marcos. He was ousted from the Filipino presidency, and then in his place was placed Corazon Aquino, one of the first female presidents of the Philippines. So I'll share a little bit more about that once we get back from the ad break. But the PP revolution, that's crazy. So I'll share a little bit more about that once we get back from the ad break, but otherwise, let's go ahead and go on that ad break. So I also need to get some water and also finish my spaghetti because I actually didn't finish my spaghetti. But I'll see you guys in a couple of minutes. Mom's spaghetti. There's spaghetti in her spaghetti already. Mom's spaghetti. Alright, see you guys in a bit. Oh my god, that was 3 minutes already. Uh-oh. Give me a second. Okay, we're back. We're back. I'll fix my calibration. Okie dokie. We are back. I finished my spaghetti, washed my dish, got some water, so now I'm ready. I'm ready for more yaps. Are you guys ready for more yaps? Let's get into it. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the PP revolution. Let's talk a little bit about that. So yeah, as I mentioned, back when we were talking about the 1970s, the Filipino president at the time, Ferdinand Marcos, he had declared martial law due to threats of communist insurrection. So around this time, he had a political rival named Aquino, Benigno Aquino Jr. His father was also a politician, so Benigno Aquino Sr., but he doesn't figure as much as Benigno Aquino Jr., also known as Nonoy, which is kind of just how Filipino nicknames work. Like, I'm pretty sure he's Nonoy, and then the third was Noy Noy. Wait, let me. We need to do some research here. Benigno Aquino. Not the third. I'm looking for Junior. I guess we're just gonna have to do Junior. Ninoy Aquino. That's kind of just how Filipino nicknames are. So Ninoy Aquino Jr., he was a political rival to Ferdinand Marcos. This guy right here. And he was, this was the president at the time. And as you can see, he was in office from 1965 to 1986. So that's over 20 years he was in office. And the main reason for that is that I'm actually not sure if the Philippines had term limits back then. But I think it definitely has term limits now. It definitely has term limits now. But part of the reason why he was president for so long is because in the 70s he did kind of employ martial law, and that was it happened around the same time as the assassination of Ninoy Aquino. So once again, this is his political rival. So at first glance it seems like a good faith, like, oh, my political rival was assassinated, we are in danger, so that's why I'm going to put in martial law. But there have been people saying that, like, this could also be kind of like a 4D chess move where, like, it was actually Marcos that had assassinated, or Marcos's people that had assassinated Ninoy Aquino, and he was just kind of using that as an excuse to instill martial law. So as you can see, like, a lot of people kind of grew
Aquino, banana fanafafino, fay momino, banino.
Wow, you said it, pancakes. That's the thing with, like, a lot of Filipino names, is that a lot of Filipino names are very fancy, but then the nickname will be something like baby or boy or boying or sugar or like, I wish I could tell you guys, like, my family members' names, but then that'd be doxing myself, but they have, like, really fancy names. I'll say that. Like, there's like, some of my aunts are named after, like, French queens, and then, like, some of my uncles are like, have very, like, traditional Filipino names, but their nicknames are like, oh, this is Uncle Boy. Like, you know, like, imagine I do have, like, an uncle named Benino, you know, it's like, oh, this is Uncle Boy, because he's a boy. Like, wait, I want to see if I did see, like, a funny video that kind of, like, goes over these kinds of memes. YouTube. I think it's like POV, you're at a Filipino party. At a Filipino party. Because he's going into, like, oh yeah, his name's Tito Boy because he's a boy. Like, maybe it's this one? Alright. Give me a second. Here we go. You're at a POV, you're at a Filipino party. I don't think this is the one that goes into it. Is it? She's so beautiful. Dang, where's the one where it's like, oh yeah, this is my tito boy, because he's a boy. Filipino parties be like, tito boy. And there's tita baby, because she was the baby, you know? Dang, I don't think it's... I think too many people make fun of the fact that Filipino parties just be like that to find like the... You're entering a Filipino house and it's all the chinelas. Anyway. But yeah, so a lot of nicknames are like that. It's like, oh, this is Auntie Baby because she's the baby of the family and she's like 50. Like, this is Tito Boy. This is Uncle RJ, and then next to him is Uncle JR, and then next to him is Uncle PJ, and then the other uncle is Uncle JP, you know? You could have a name like George, but the nickname is Gordito. Yeah, it's very similar to like Mexican nickname schemes, right? Where it's like it's more of like like, oh, you know, you got a you got a lazy eye, guess what? Your nickname is Eyes now. My mom being called baby, not because she's the youngest, but that she was the smallest. Yeah, Filipino nicknames do be like that. So yeah, Benigno Aquino Jr., he was assassinated, and what a segue, right? He was assassinated, and then this was around the same time as Marcos had instilled martial law. But part of it was also this idea of like, oh, it's to also dissuade communist insurrection. Right? So after a couple of years of that, over 10 years in fact, of that, the Filipino people had had enough, especially because a lot of people were getting quote-unquote disappeared by the Marcos regime. So eventually during 1986, there was what was called the People Power Revolution in the Philippines. So this was like a widespread action protest that was happening in a place called EDSA, which is what is it? Emilio... What does EDSA stand for again? It's like, is it Emilio Bonifacio? Wait. EDSA. Epifanio de los Santos. There we go. Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, which is like the main kind of like road, street. It looks like this. It's a big road. So a lot of people were like crowding this road due to kind of like protest things that were happening in the country. And it was even to the point where like everyone was protesting, like even the church, even like nuns, even like people of the military that didn't support Marcos, like everyone was protesting. As you can see here, there's people on the light posts that are sitting on top of the light posts. And fun fact, my dad was here too. Like, my dad was also, he's probably somewhere in this picture, I don't know, but like, but he had told me that like during that time he did hear that there was like a big action happening, and he's not the most like political guy, granted, but the fact that like it was just that widespread that like he had heard that like something was happening at EDSA, so he had gone to also kind of like join in on the crowd and see what was going on. So yeah, fun fact, my dad was there. I think by this point my mom's family had already gone to the US, and I asked her if it was partially because of like the Marcos regime, and I forgot what she said. I'm gonna be honest with you, I forgot what she said. So yeah, that was all happening during the 1980s. Those are a couple of like current events that were happening at the time. So let's go ahead and move on to pop culture. So even if you weren't alive, or if you didn't have relatives that were alive during this time, then there are a couple other things to kind of anchor you to this time period, including the pop culture. So I kind of put some like random youth culture things here that didn't quite fit into anything else, but shopping malls were a big thing. This is where you go to chill out. This is where you go to hang out with your buddies and your friends, right? So shopping malls, wrestling became kind of like more of a big deal during this time. This is when you get into kind of like the era of like WWF. Like I said, I've never really like grown up with like WWF or WWE or anything like that, but I had a lot of friends who were into it. I very much remember like being in elementary school, and some of my friends had shirts that said Stone Cold Steve Austin on them. Trying to remember like who else was during that time. Undertaker. I don't know if The Rock was popular during this time or the 2000s, but I do remember a couple of names here and there, but I myself never really watched it. The NBA also started to get really popular during this time as well. I know that like Michael Jordan was like a household name, and that's why Space Jam, became a thing. Dungeons and Dragons is another thing that kind of popped off during this time, and then some subcultures that came about were like the goth movement, the hard rock movement, which we'll also see when we get into fashion. So if you need to know what kind of music was happening during this time, you have pop, such as the king of pop, my beloved Michael Jackson. Once again, his biopic is out now. Dang, being feet for free. I found these on the side of the road. Do you like them? Do you like... I found these legs on the side of the road. It's the return of long legs Binka. Also, hello Nep. Hello. We are talking about the 1980s. We went over how Ronald Reagan is the devil, and then also Ferdinand Marcos is the devil, but also Margaret Thatcher is the devil. So this time was ruled by a lot of devils. And all such things. But yeah, hey! I'm big! You am big in the bink! But yeah, what was I saying? There was the Michael Jackson biopic. The Michael Jackson biopic is out now in theaters, I believe. What's up, Schnackery? What's up? Oh, he's talking to his little, like, he has a bird toy that he likes to talk to. Binka really skipped leg day? I did. Meow. Wait, oh no, if you summon the cats, does that mean they're gonna be sitting on top of my legs? Oh no. Wanted to see how the legs looked with it. I did skip leg day. What's wrong? Oh my god, he has the bird in his mouth. Okay, give me a second, he wants to leave. Alright, Schnackery was oh, the cats are- that's right, I forgot that I put the cats in another place entirely. They can go on top of the legs. Oh, nope, they can't. Actually, they can't. No, why would you shrink me? Why would you shrink the bink? No, now everyone knows that I just found these legs off of the side of the road. No! Dang it. My illusions. They have been seen through. But yeah, as you guys can hear from right now, with Rock With You, this was the time of Michael Jackson. Timu Bear Legs? Maybe. Maybe that's where I found them. My immersion! I'm concerned for whose legs those are. Don't worry about it. No, don't worry about it. If they really needed these legs, they wouldn't be on the side of the street. Am I right? Am I right? Anyway. So there's Michael Jackson, there's also Prince, Whitney Houston, and Madonna. All included in pop, right? Also Duran Duran. You also had, this was also the start of hip-hop. I don't know why I thought hip-hop was a lot older, but I think I'm thinking of, like, everything that led up to hip-hop. So, like, wait, what happened? I heard some sound effects. Oh, I'm regular size now. I'm regular size now. Grimace had to sell his legs after the birthday shake killed a bunch of people. You know what? I think you're onto something there. I think you're onto something. But yeah, so hip-hop was coming about during this time. So you had Public Enemy, NWA, LL Cool J, the Beastie Boys, and Run DMC as kind of like the top examples. It's someone's, we haven't figured out whose. Are they yours? I mean, yeah, I did get an idea from Matthew that I should just start stealing people's legs. I think I just might. I think what'd be funny is, like, if I did go with this bit of stealing people's legs, but it's, like, the closest approximation. So if I were to steal Nap's legs, it's like I am stealing them from, like, I'm not actually stealing his legs. I'm going to the nearest museum, finding the nearest mannequin that looks enough like Blinking Sam, and just like stealing those legs. And like if I'm trying to steal like Matthew's legs, I'm just getting like a random grill and I'm like unscrewing the wheels. Right? And like if I'm trying to steal like Mega Bronson or Beans' legs, it's just these same legs but recolored, you know? So yeah, it's don't worry about where the legs came from. You worry about what's going on with your guys' legs, is all I'll say. Are you gonna steal a random possum's legs? Well, you did say I can't steal with you. I don't want to make that joke. I was gonna make a joke of like, like, should I steal wheels? Should I steal wheels? But I'm sorry if that's too insensitive. I was like, but also I would yes. You just see me with like wheels. Like, it's like I got these wheels off of steal the wheels. Yeah, so I get the grill wheels from Matthew, and I get the bigger wheels from Ghosty. I've thought about making a terribly drawn lower half of my PNG one day. That would be so funny. That'd be so funny. The like, you should do MS Paint. I keep telling people like, you guys should get into MS Paint. Get on the MS Paint. Now is the time for derpy MS Paint drawings. Like, look up Naive Design. Because of the influx of AI generated imagery and like this like rejection of AI, it's now kind of like in vogue to have derpy ass drawings. I mean derpy drawings, derpy drawings, derpy drawings. See, MS Paint you say? Yeah, yeah, get on the MS Paint. Looks down, wait a minute. Alright, where was I? Alright. What else do we have here? Synth pop. So you got Pet Shop Boys, Men Without Hats, Depeche Mode, Hard Rock and Heavy Metal, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and Iron Maiden, and parody music. Parody music. So Weird Al Yankovic came about during the 80s, and he's still going strong. Maybe I should do my Minecraft MS Paint approximations on stream. Yeah, you should. You should. I dig them. I like them. So that's music. I think this is Beastie Boys. I think this is Public Enemy. I'm kind of a fake fan. I think this is NWA. Weird Al Mention. Oh yeah, and you had like synthesizers during this time. I want to say this is Depeche Mode. I know I put these images here, but I just forget. Weird Al is amazing to see live, by the way. Ooh, I would be down. I'd be down to see Weird Al Yankovic perform live. Movies. So what was coming out during this time? Last time we had stuff like Star Wars. Now we got stuff like E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Shinin, and Breakfast Club. Excuse me. I had to burp a little bit. I remember seeing Breakfast Club when I was in high school, and it was so iconic, right? Like, it's such a simple like premise, but I don't know. There was something nice and funky about it. What else? So E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Shining, Ghostbusters. Who are you gonna call? Ghostbusters. Top Gun, Back to the Future. I'm surprised I didn't put Back to the Future here, but I did put... Where is it? I did put The DeLorean. The DeLorean is here. That's another one of my favorite movies. If Space Odyssey is like my favorite movie period, then like my other favorites would be like Breakfast Club, Back to the Future. Trying to think of what else. I haven't seen some of these other ones. I don't think I've ever seen Aliens or Terminator, if I'm being honest. And then Die Hard, I think I just saw like a little smidge of it. And then, as I said, Breakfast Club is also really fun. Raiders is one of the reasons why I studied archaeology in school. Oh, nice! Cool. I mean, it's a good thing that none of us had to dodge any boulders, right? Am I right? Am I right? It's like, Binka didn't go to the school where you had to dodge all the boulders. Weird Al is so cool. Aliens is good. I have no doubt. I mean, are all the people that are thirsting over the alien, like, could so many people be wrong, you know? If so many people are into that alien, you know? Karate Kid is also my favorite 80s movie. Ah, Wax On, Wax Off. But the one without Jaden Smith, right? Mishnackery. Do you like Jaden Smith? I don't think he likes Jaden Smith. Alien and Aliens, really weird how they never made another Alien film ever again. Right, Shnackery? Isn't that weird? He's sitting and just being pet by Beans right now. Meow. TV shows. Let's see. Binka, I will watch both of them with you if you want. And I can explain Farm Fresh Xenomorphs to you? Well, now I'm curious. Now I'm curious. I remember seeing someone say about the DeLorean and Back to the Future, if the movie took place in the 2000s, the time machine would have been made from a PT Cruiser. I mean, that's the thing, because I barely did my car studies this morning. And, like, I was trying to find, like, some iconic 80s cars that, like, would help me in Time Guesser, right? Because you could easily just Google 80s cars and it'll show you, like, this, like, full gamut of just, like, different cars, but not all of them were, like, accessible cars, especially to, like, middle-class folks. So I wanted to go for, like, what were the most popular cars during this time, right? And then I still ended up drawing the DeLorean because it's just so iconic for the time, in my opinion, right? It's just so iconic. Oh yeah, so TV shows, you had Full House. I only barely watched this as a kid. But everyone is so aesthetic in this, right? Oh, Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, right? This was their beginning as well. Golden Girls, A-Team, MacGyver, Cheers, and Taxi. I'm gonna be so honest with you, I never watched any of those, but I have heard of them. A-Team and Golden Girls especially. I have a friend who, like, swears by Golden Girls, loves Golden Girls. It makes me want to watch it, just how passionate this guy is about Golden Girls. And it seems like it's funny. It also seems like it was very, like, it brought up a lot of, like, good topics for the time as well. Oh yeah, so the 80s was also the time that you saw an expansion of cable TV. What a concept, right? Especially as a kid, I kind of just grew up with, like, basic cable, and then as a kid I eventually got, like, actual cable. But to think that there was a time where all of us had that experience, where all of us had to watch just The Maury Show and just Jerry Springer. I think that's more so 90s, but yeah, popularization of channels like MTV, HBO, CNN, ESPN, and Nickelodeon, those all came about during the 80s. And then, even though I barely watched, like, some of these shows because they did, once again, I'm a 90s kid, I did catch a couple of the 80s cartoons. So, I actually didn't watch TMNT. I did not watch TMNT. I know that that's such a, like, hallmark of being a 90s kid, especially, like, an early 90s kid. But I actually never watched it growing up. I did see little, like, parts of episodes here and there, especially the parts where they're eating the pizza, where the pull is just so perfect. The pull on the pizza, so good. Heroes in a half shell, turtle power. Yeah, exactly. I love how cute they look in this, like, 90s iteration, right? Like, they're so round. They're so round. But I did watch Thundercats as a kid. Thunder, 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 Thundercats! With, like, Snarf over here. Snarf! Oh, I wish I remember their names. Lionel, Tigra, Panthro, and I want to say Chitara. What were their names? Was it, like, something Kit and something Cat? Oh my god, I forgot their names. I forgot the names of the kids, but I remember that one is Snarf. Sneef Snorf! I love how the place they got pizza from was just down to sell them literally anything. Oh, you know what? I think I remember. I think it's Wily Kid and Wily Cat. I think those were their names. So, Chitara, Wily Kid, Wily Cat, Lionel, Panthro, Tigra? Tigara? It was something with, like, tiger, and then you have Snarf. And then did you guys know that in the 2010s they made an anime? Or I think it was, like, animated by, like, a Korean studio, but it was, like, in anime style, but they remade Thundercats in, like, anime style. Ah, yes, Thundercats, the show where we gloss over the fact that the main hero is mentally a child in an adult body. Exactly, exactly. Just like that one DC character. Just like that one DC character. There was also He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. This is another one that I was aware of, but never actually watched back in the day. Alvin and the Chipmunks I remember watching. Inspector Gadget. Inspector Gadget. And And it's funny because I'm thinking of like when I watched these as a kid. I feel like there was a time where like they were just putting on like old shows, and it wasn't necessarily Nick at Night or like retro. Like I think certain channels just had these shows on, even though by the time I had watched them, they were already like at least 10 years old, right? Or 20 even. No, 10 years old. 10 years old. DuckTales is another one. DuckTales, woo! So these were the kinds of shows that were happening during the 80s. And then in terms of technology, you had personal home computers, and Macintosh popularized something called WIMP. So this stood for Window Icons Menu Pointer, which we kind of take for granted nowadays, but it's hard to believe that there was a point where that wasn't a thing. Like, it was mainly through like typing things out were you able to do any kind of commands, like run programs, run video games, or do anything like that, right? So like this idea of using, Windows, not Windows the operating system, but like a window, like with the like Chrome is its own window with like the X, the maximize, the minimize, right? So that's a window. Your icons, as in like what you click on in order to like start a program or start like an executable. Menus, so like, when you click like file or edit on like a window. And then pointer, so like your mouse cursor, right? So once again, we kind of take it for granted, but that was like new technology back in the 80s. And then the internet started to become a thing. For me, this was kind of like hard to imagine because when I think of like early internet, I think of AOL. I think of you got mail. But of course, the internet was a thing way before that. It's just that things like AOL, MSN made it a little bit more accessible. So I actually don't know too much about like the early internet during this time. The source that I saw, which is just Wikipedia, said that this was mostly through academia. So if you were like doing research for something, you could access the internet, but maybe not as much for personal home computers. I don't know. For anyone who knows better, feel free to correct me. And then you also saw the spread of TVs in the developing world. So places that people would call like third world countries or something, they started to also get access to TVs. And then Polaroid cameras were also popular during this time. Lastly, some video games. Some consoles included the Atari, the NES, and the Game Boy. And then some games that might sound a little familiar to you guys include Space Invaders, the very first Super Mario Brothers, Tetris, Pac-Man, Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Donkey Kong, and Frogger. These all came about during the 80s, and as you can see, a lot of them still survive to the modern day. Especially Space Invaders. You could access with home computers, but it took specific hardware and know-how, and given that 99% of houses didn't even have a home computer yet. Okay, I see. Because, yeah, I feel like it wasn't until the 90s that the internet was just a little bit more accessible. And once again, I associate it with, like, AOL, right? America Online, where, they start the whole dial-up process, and then you get in, and it shows you the little, like, you got mail thing. So yeah, these were all things that were happening in pop culture at the time. So I think from here, we'll talk about fashion and cars because those are going to be the most helpful to us in terms of time guesser stuff. And then we'll end off by talking about art, design, interior design, graphic design, and art movements because we're going to be seeing some familiar names here like Keith Haring, Jeff Koons, and all of that. It's crazy to think, but home computers weren't considered commonplace until at least the 2000s. Yeah, that's true. That's true because my dad had a computer back when I was growing up. I'm thinking that I didn't really have one until the late 90s. And even then, it was like the computer in the living room. It was never like in my room. It was like in the living room for everyone to access. I love this song. But yeah, it wasn't that widespread. Yeah, the family computer, exactly. But even then, I still remember, because the way that I think about like what year things happened when in my childhood was like I used to move around quite a bit in my childhood. Like I lived in my first house until I was 8, and then moved shortly after my little brother was born, and then moved again after that, and then moved one final time, when my other 2 siblings were born. So I'm trying to remember, like, I remember, like, as early as 8, my dad had a computer. And I remember one time I couldn't sleep. This is actually one of my most fond memories. Is one time like I couldn't sleep and I saw him at his computer and he was playing a video game. Oh my god, what was it called? I actually have it saved. Last forever. Everybody wants to rule the world. Where the light won't find you. Where is it? Oh, Descent Free Space. When did this come out? I'll be right behind you. 1998, yeah. So, Descent Free Space. It's a game called Descent Free Space. Let me see if I can get the link for this right now. Body wants to rule the world. I couldn't sleep one night and my dad happened to be playing this game right here. And I remember he was telling me to like all right, if you can't sleep then help me win this game. And I remember it was something he gave me like a super simple task. It was like, when I tell you, I want you to press the space bar. You know, it was something like super simple, but I just remember like I would be sitting on his lap and then he'd be like, all right, do it, press the space bar. And I like helped him with a campaign or something. It was very cute. But yeah, like, so as early as like 1998, my dad had a computer. And then I remember he and my uncle on my mom's side, they were both really into computers, and I feel like, you know, this was such a rarity back in the day, but they would go to like swap meets and stuff where they would just scope out different computer parts, like hard drives and stuff, and they would bring me with them. And I remember back then I was like bored out of my mind. I'm like, Dad, can we go home? I'm bored. You guys are looking at metal and green stuff and like, because like I guess like a lot of the chips and motherboards and stuff were like green, and that's kind of like the main thing I remember. But then my dad would be like, if you be quiet, I'll get you Spy Fox, or I'll get you Putt Putt, I'll get you Pajama Sam if you stop complaining. And it worked. It worked actually. But anyway, that's something to look forward to in the 90s. But yeah, so computers weren't really that widespread until around like late 90s, early 2000s. So then in the 80s, they existed, people had them, but they weren't as widespread. Alright, so yeah, let's go ahead and move on to fashion in cars. So here's some examples of the fashion of the time. You had the big hair, you had the power dressing, as they would call it. I'll go over that in a little bit. You also had some subcultures like goth and glam rock and hip hop. And then, oh yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, I added some family members in here. So this is actually Binka Mama and Binka Papa. Or Papa Binks and Mama Binks over here. I covered their faces, of course. But I wanted to try and show, like, the fact that my mom used to have, like, permed hair. Her hair is not naturally curly by any means. But it's funny because, like, back in, like, the 80s and 90s, and when I was growing up in the early 90s, she always had permed hair. So I thought that's just what her hair always looked like. And it wasn't until she stopped perming her hair in, like, the late 90s that I was like, oh, her hair is straight, actually. But yeah, this was the fashion of the time. These are the two parentals. Look at the cool jacket, the jeans. Let's see. Yeah, the permed hair. And then this one is very like this is my mom and a coworker, but also family friend who I grew up calling like Tita, auntie, right? But she's not actually related to us. But yeah, look, my mom's rocking the yellow dress shirt with like a vest, but the shirt's not tucked in, but it's like a look, right? It looks good. And then my auntie over here is rocking the like loose, kind of translucent shirt with the jeans. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff. And then you did see like some denim stuff. Oh, and aerobics, fitness clothing. So let's see what I have here in terms of notes. Radical, dude. So the early half of the decade was a bit of a rejection of the psychedelic ornate fashions of the 70s in favor of more minimal and practical outfits. So this was like kind of the top example. But then once you got into like mid to late 80s, you saw them get a little bit more vivid with their designs. But you also see some of the colorations are a little bit more muted. But yeah, as I put here, the latter half was a return to a new flavor of vivid coloration. So you saw hot pinks, neon blues, neon yellow, electric green, fluorescent yellow. I'm gonna head out, but have a good stream, Bink and chat. Thanks for stopping by, Fagubi. I appreciate you. Have a good rest of your day. But also, like, the more preppy fashions would also lean more towards, like, pastels. But kind of like a big thing would definitely be, like, the big hair. So accessories included scrunchies and chunky jewelry. There was also alternative fashion, such as street style, punk, post-punk. And then some popular fashions, like I had mentioned before, were aerobic and fitness. So they had the leg warmers, they had the tights, they had the leotards, oversized sweatshirts over all of that, the headbands. Hip-hop culture is another one that, to this day, I still think is, like, the best fashion. I just really like 80s, like, hip-hop fashion back then. So here you would see the Adidas tracksuits, the graphic tees, loose jeans, cargo pants, high-top sneakers. You got your high-top sneakers, especially the Adidas, the Adudus. Like, it's the reason why, like, now you're seeing the illusion. My real legs versus the legs I found on the side of the road. But that's the reason why my model has Adidas. I just love Adidas. Even though these are called Adudus. Because I don't want John Adidas to come after me. And be like, why is this bear on the internet talking about my brand? You know? So yeah, you had your high top shoes. Let's see. Berets and bucket hats. There's also a subgenre that I didn't know about called New Romantics, and it looked like they kind of just revived frilly and flowy clothing, but I always think of the Seinfeld episode where Jerry Seinfeld, he's given like this very frilly outfit, and like the classic line from that episode is the, I don't want to be a pirate. I just think of that. There's also preppy style. So these are the folks that had like the polo shirts, either tucked or untucked. You had your sweaters over the shoulders, you know, your blazers and sweaters, with sneakers and boat shoes. So stuff like this, like business, casual, preppy, yuppie kind of. Yeah, goth and glam metal were also big during this time. Fun fact, the pirate shirt from Seinfeld is in the Smithsonian. That's so cool. That's so cool. I remember, like, I don't know too much about, like, costume history, but I do remember that, there was this one time I had done an internship that just so happened to, like, stop by a studio at UCLA, or I guess University of California, Los Bincos, so UBLB. It was at UCLA, and they, I think, in their like costume designing department, they have a couple of like, I forgot if they had like Seinfeld ones, but they definitely have like the coat from Joseph and the Technicolor like coat series or player. I forgot what it was. They had something else too, but it's just so cool to see like the actual costumes that you would see like on TV, right? But yeah, so we have goth subculture, we had glam rock subculture. And then if we break it down by gender lines, women started wearing shoulder pads. So one big thing with the 80s is that women started to become more common in the workplace. If you watch, for example, Mad Men, all the way back in the 60s, like women were already in the workplace, but they were more so doing traditionally like feminine roles, such as like being the secretary, right? And kind of a big arc in Mad Men was this female character, Peggy, kind of rising up the ranks, but that was like pretty rare for the times, and you can kind of tell with like how the story portrays it. So by the 70s this would only increase, and then by the 80s it was completely ordinary to see women in the workplace. So as such, you would definitely be seeing them in like professional wear, but also to kind of like further emphasize the fact that they belong in the workplace, they would wear shoulder pads, and they would do what's called power dressing, where you have this like oversized silhouette, strong silhouette, and big accessories like earrings and jewelry. A lot of times they would also wear stockings with pumps. And then this was another big thing, the hair. This is the dead giveaway for the 80s, is how big the hair is. It's nice and poofy. Even though this person has short hair, it's nice and poofy. It's like either teased or you use hairspray and stuff. Like I said, my mom had like this like permed hair back in the day. So yeah, big hair is the name of the game. Oh, look at this. I didn't even realize this guy has a mullet over here, right? Got your mullets. Because, like, starting with the 70s, men, it was a little bit more regular for men to have longer hair as well. Another fun fact, my dad used to have really long hair to the point where he had to, like, tie it, but I guess by this point he had cut it. Makeup was also typically heavy with vivid lipstick, eyeshadow, and blush. I'm not seeing it too much in any of these pictures. This one, like, has very vibrant, like, eyeshadow and lipstick. You do also see the blush here, and then this person also has, like, vivid blush. And then for men, you saw graphic tees, flannel shirts, denim jackets, blazers, khakis, chinos, denim jeans, parachute pants, baseball hats, bandanas, aviators, fingerless gloves, and chunky wristwatches. So, like, the denim fit was kind of like a hallmark alongside these, like, kind of like track jackets, these heavy jackets, stuff like that. So, yeah. Hopefully this will help us in our time guesser shenanigans. But it seems like the thing to look out for would be like a lot of denim. Vivid colors, but not in the same way as like the 70s, where the 70s had like wild patterns. This is more so like just more so the colors themselves. And then big hair. Big hair. Alright, let me take a sip of water and then we'll move on to cars. Okay. Yo star, video kill the radio star. Big hair. Okay, cars. I just did my car study this morning. And for those who don't know what I mean when I say that is I have the most trouble recognizing different car designs. Just because I don't know too much about cars in general. So the thing that helps me differentiate between car types the most is drawing them. So I drew 4 this morning. Let me actually get my video star. Video killed the radio star. I drew the Chevrolet Citation. For one, I found it funny that it's called that. Like, it's called the Citation. So Chevy Citation, which is this car. One thing that I noticed with this one was that compared to cars in the late 70s, the grille is starting to become, or I'm assuming this is the grille. That, once again, I don't know the lingo, but the grille is starting to become a little bit more simplified compared to like earlier cars. And then as we go through the years, you're gonna see it become more and more simplified until it kind of like, in some car types, kind of just disappears. Not all of them though, not all of them. The headlights are also more square than circular for a lot of them. Grille mention. What did I put here? So stricter safety regulations and fines in aerodynamics led to a return to boxiness. So back all the way in the 60s, starting from like, yeah, the 60s into the 70s and now into the 80s, the cars do become a little bit more boxy. Though the 70s did have a little bit more like curvature in certain parts of the car. But here we are seeing like a return to this like kind of geometric boxiness, with exception to the back. So especially if a car is a hatchback, it would have like more of a curve to like its back end over here. The early 80s are still boxy with square headlights and a simplified grille. The back would get sloped, especially with the hatchback cars. And then the later 80s saw more sloped hoods to the point of being flattened, and headlights and the grille becoming more minimal. Also less chrome decoration, but sometimes features black lines as accents. So if we compare to what we saw in the 70s over here. So yeah, as you can, what I mean by the grille is like this area right here where the headlights and the fender are. So they change quite a bit, but they do start becoming more minimal in the 80s. These are also really thick, like in the 80s as well. I feel like I should put more examples, but what else? What else? Oh yeah, I wanted to show off the chrome. Where is the 70s? Where is it? Oh, here. So if you see like there's a couple of like accents on some of these cars, you definitely saw it during the 50s and 60s as well. A lot of times there's like chrome accents on a lot of these. This is an exception. This is more wood as an accent. And then here's some chrome over here. In the 80s, less chrome, but you would see some accents like this black line over here. This over here on the DeLorean. This one doesn't even really have an accent anymore, but there is kind of like a line hinting at it. Is boxy. Le Grill, what the heck is that? You think that 80s cars are the ugliest decade for cars? I love 80s cars. Well, the thing is, it depends. I'm gonna say that, like, I like the DeLorean. I think I like the ones where the grill is very minimal. So, for example, like, I'm a sucker for Honda Accords, mostly because that's kind of the only car I really know. Because when I was a kid, my dad had a Honda Accord 96. So when I'm looking at this, I actually like this a lot. It reminds me of the car from Initial D. And then this one too, like the sleeker, the more aesthetically pleasing for me. But once you get into like the boxy ones that you see from the early 80s and late 70s, those are the ones that I'm kind of like, I don't really prefer it that much. Like these two, I like. There's something about this reminds me of like Transformers for some reason. But that being said, I do think I prefer cars of the 90s a little more, but like late 80s, early 90s, I think might be my favorite in terms of like car designs. But to each their own, right? To each their own. The top right car definitely came with a card phone. Right? Wait, top right car. Either this one or this one. I think this is early 80s, and then it circles around into late 80s by this point. I agree, it's mostly the boxy ones that I don't like. Ah, I see. Yeah, the boxy ones, they feel... This is gonna sound ultra specific, but they remind me of the Wonder Years. And it's not that I hated the Wonder Years, I just didn't watch it. But there's something about it that reminds me of the Wonder Years. Whereas, like, these ones are giving a little bit more, like, Back to the Future vibes, even though this is literally the DeLorean. Or like cassette futurism too, like that aesthetic that we had talked about before, cassette futurism. This kind of reminds me of that, right? It's like, this reminds me of Back to the Future, as there's literally the Back to the Future car. She's been living in a... So yeah, I drew the Chevrolet Citation. I don't know if I can show you guys the drawings because they came out kind of crappy, but I'll post them on the Discord. And then the DeLorean I also drew. After that, yeah, so this is the Honda Accord 1985, followed by the Nissan 300ZX. This is 1989. So by this point we're getting into the late 80s. Yeah, oh no, I think this is the Nissan actually. I think this is a what does it say? Porsche? But one of these is the Nissan. So yeah, basically if we are playing time guesser, the boxier, the more it's likely to be late 70s or early 80s, and then the more kind of I guess like more sloped downward, the more likely it is to be late 80s. However, one thing to know is that a lot of times middle class and lower income families are more likely to have cars from the previous decade. So even if we see a car like this in a picture, that might actually be a picture from the 1990s, right? So yeah, something to keep in mind with cars. And now we move on to my favorite part. The art! So this is gonna look like a jumbled mess because the way that I've been putting it together is a lot of these art movements don't just suddenly stop like within a decade. A lot of them continue on, or they're established in an earlier decade, but then they continue on into the next decade. We saw this as early as like the 1920s, where you saw the beginning of surrealism, but it would continue on into like the 1930s and 40s. Oh my god, Beans loves this song. You have the power to go destructible. Always believe it, 'cause you are gold. We have to consider, does the person look poor? I know, right? Do they dress like a Babinka bear? Alright, so, oh yeah, so, for example, a good example of what I'm talking about, where like something is established in an earlier decade but continues on, is street art. So, street art, as we had talked about with Mega Bronson, by the way, in our collab a couple a month or so ago, is that street art actually started closer to the 1960s, but became a little bit more apparent by the 70s, and 100% continued into the 80s, arguably even into the 90s. So, even into like modern day, right? So contemporary times. So, I didn't quite have a section for street art here, but do know that it did continue on, and some big names in that were Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring. Both of them had kind of like contributed to the street art, graffiti art movement. What else? I think yeah. Let's do this. The big kind of like art movements for the time, or at least the ones that I chose to focus on, were neo-pop art. Stuff that looks like this, which your mileage will vary, as with all art movements, especially if they're contemporary, your mileage will vary. So neo-pop, neo-expressionism. I'm excited to talk about this because, as I had mentioned yesterday, prior to me doing research, I actually didn't really care much for the art of Jean-Michel Basquiat. I was not like really into like kind of the messiness of it, and kind of like how some of his artwork was arguably kind of grotesque. But the more I researched into him, the more I researched into his whole like story and his whole process, the more I came to appreciate a lot of his work. And now I'm a big fan. I would say that I'm a fan. Especially with his colors. His use of colors is really cool, but we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But he is part of the neo-expressionist movement, but he does also have roots in the street art movement under the name SAMMO, which just stands for, and I'm quoting this, so it's okay if I swear, same old shit. So that's what that comes from. So we have neo-expressionism, neo-pop, and then this is also the beginning of computer art and digital art. Albeit, once again, we were talking about like computers were accessible as far back as the 60s, but because they were getting more popular, especially as like personal home entertainment systems or personal computer systems, you would see more people making art with them. So there's that, and I feel like there's something I'm missing here. And then there's also a brief look into interior and graphic design. So because we don't have another ad break for the next 3 minutes, we'll do interior and graphic design, and then we'll go into like the bigger art movements. So that way we can also get a little bit of aesthetic in there. So let me go ahead and look into the aesthetics wiki. Laser grid. Glad to see the cup is there, right? I love that cup. So I just chose like some very specific examples. So in terms of graphic design of the time, you saw a couple of styles including Memphis design and Memphis light. Memphis design is more so an interior design, but it would get translated into what's called Memphis light, which is the cup design, of course. But let's go ahead and look it up. There was also laser grid, which I'll get into as well. But let's talk first about Memphis design and Memphis light. Battlecrackers, hello. I just discovered Aesthetics Wiki the other day while getting a random YouTube recommendation about, yes, Global Village Coffee House. I love Global Village Coffee House. That one is awesome. I did like a style study of that one a couple months ago, and that one is fun. I think that one also started coming about during this time as well, though you definitely saw it a little bit more towards the 1990s. Ah, Michael Jackson. I love the song. So yeah, for a really quick look at that, here we go. We have some interior design. It's been updated since the last time I looked at this. But here's an example of like Global Village Coffee House, like colors outside of their shapes and outside of their eyeline, their lines. Sorry, I'm just really into the song. I'm just like, oh, I love the song so much. Stuff like this, right? Cause they got nowhere to go. That's why I want you to know. I'm starting with the bear in the mirror. I'm asking her to change her way. And no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. What is the name and how would you call the arcade rug style with the fluorescent planets and squiggles? That's probably laser grid. That's probably this one. It might also still be Memphis Light. Yeah, I like this one because it is always what's the meme again? Like it is always what is it? Morally correct to steal from Adobe. Like I think that's where this is from, right? The short made me think of your streams immediately. Oh, cool, 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 cool. But yeah, we do get into Memphis Design. Oh, and you know what? We do have an ad break coming up, so this is actually a good place to take a pause for a little bit. I'm starting with the the bear in the mirror. I'm asking her to change her ways. And no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. Does this site have laser photo portrait background? The laser's photo portrait background? The laser photo print. I think so. If you look at laser grid, it might. It might. But you know what? Let me put you guys in recess. Let me check for myself while I vibe to Michael Jackson. And then we'll be back in a couple of minutes and we'll talk about art of the 80s. And no message could have been any clearer. If you want to make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make a change. Smooth operator. We're back. We are back. I was listening to Smooth Operator. I hope you guys were good during recess. Zako, hello. Guess who won her Gundam TCG release event? Good job! Good job, Zako. Glad to hear it. The Jazz Cup was Memphis Light, right? I believe so. I believe so. We'll go over it right now, actually. So yes, a couple of cool designs that came out of the 80s was Memphis Design, followed by Memphis Light, as well as Laser Grid. So we'll go over that right now. So according to this aesthetics wiki, which I'll blow up right now, Memphis Design was an Italian design and architecture group founded in Milan, 1980, emerging from a desire to challenge minimalist and functionalist aesthetics. This is actually going to be a common theme that we're going to be seeing with the art movements as well, of challenging the idea of conceptual and minimalist art with something wild and eclectic and just explosive in its vibes, you know? So characterized by vibrant neon and pastel colors, bold geometric shapes, playful use of patterns including squiggly and zigzag lines, Memphis Design was aimed to inject emotional and symbolic meaning to everyday objects. So here's kind of like the main demonstration of that. So as you can see, like big vivid colors, not so much emphasis on things like pattern, but just like this vivid coloration instead. There is a little bit of patterning like with this like black and white over here, but also like playing more so with shape rather than pattern. Pattern will be more so like the 1970s. 1980s is all about color and shape. So that's Memphis Design. This is more so talked about with things like objects like design, interior design, stuff like that. Like this is another good example of this, of just like how everything looks pretty ordinary here, but then you see like all these vivid colorations, these like primary colors and stuff like that. Design wise, ooh, this is like, whoa, look at this. This reminds me of like Power Rangers, like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Like this is a place where they would be chilling, right? So yeah, this use of just like bright, vivid colors. Memphis Light is what you would see more through kind of like those cups, right? This is more like design, interior and graphic design. So Memphis Light is the corporatized, more stylized, direct evolution of Memphis Design. It arose because the latter was poorly suited to incorporate into existing home designs and came to encompass graphic design and fashion more than interior design. So if you're talking about the actual aesthetic as you see it in like graphics and fashion, it's Memphis Light. Memphis Design is more so interior design. So there we go. There's the cup, right? There's the cup. We're seeing some like album covers with like touches of Memphis Light. Ooh, this is a neat one. Oh my God, is this Polly Pocket? I remember these from when I was a kid. This too, wow, this is amazing. And the buildings have a little touch of the Global Village Coffee House design to it as well. This one is another one that I included, like just the little squiggles over here. The name of the game here is color. Color rather than pattern, right? Ooh, cool. Greatest hits. Right, look again at these like vivid colorations. Wow, greatest hits of 1986. You have Lionel Richie, Whitney Houston, Billy Ocean. Let's see, 5-star. Yeah, lots of pinks, teals, and purples. Are we going Western or Eastern 80s? Are you gonna talk about Journey or their Filipino singer? Anyway, you wanted that's the way you needed. The last decade of American optimism and general world optimism. Cool. But yeah. So we're just going all over like the 80s in general. But yeah, so like those are examples of like ooh, this one is like top tier. I love this. This is the Duran Duran album, right? Rio. With like this figure that you would see in a lot of like beauty salons. There's a specific artist too that's associated with this. I just unfortunately forgot their name, but once I get it again, I will show you guys. MTV is also like a big indicator of like the Memphis Light design. I think a lot of their visuals, like their like bumpers and stuff, also had Memphis Light in it as well. Goofy Movie, this little design as well. Her name is Rio and she dances across the sand. Oh my god, this something so comical about this. Oh my gosh, this Sonic one. Look at the shapes, the little squigglies and the zigzags, right? So yeah, that's basically Memphis Light in a nutshell. This one is also more, yeah, I was gonna say this is more like Global Village Coffee House, right? There's something about like the pastel and like the textures here that remind me of Global Village Coffee House, but very cool, very cool. And the other big aesthetic, or one of another one of the many big aesthetics that you would see around this time would be laser grid. So this one is a visual design aesthetic that was prevalent in the 1980s, overlapping with Memphis Design and Memphis Light. It's characterized by laser-like visuals on dark backgrounds, a grid motif, and airbrush chrome effects. In architecture and interior design, right-angle shapes and a combination of black with reflective surfaces, such as chrome and glass, are typical. So yeah, this is such a good like kind of like show of what that means. So not only was there a grid, but there's also a glowy effect to it. You also see like the airbrush background over here, the vivid coloration in this one. And then this was also something that you saw in interior design. And the way that I was explaining it to Beans when we were taking a walk yesterday is the interior design feels kind of like minimalism, but almost like darker and sleeker in a way. I was trying to find some examples here. Oh, you know what? It's going into another style entirely called monochrome luxe. Here, let me show you guys what that looks like. This kind of overlaps with it as well, but monochrome luxe. So this one feels a little bit more like minimalism, but as opposed to the 2010s minimalism, which was all about like white walls, sterile white, you know, walls. This one felt almost like darker, but also sleeker. You see a little bit more emphasis on like darker colors, but like they're shiny, they're sleek. But there's also a little bit more plant life in it. So this is a good one. This one is like more so white, but you also see a lot of like black accenting with like the like this mirror frame over here, the black horizontal and vertical lines, the black chairs. But then also you have like plants like this. This makes me very nostalgic because I remember like whenever my mom would visit her friends and bring me along, they had apartments that look like this, or that kind of look like this. Round, baby, right round, like a record, baby, right round, round, round. Global Village Coffee House always makes me think of 90s bookstores and old textbooks. Yeah, 100% Battle Crackers. First Mega Man box art was basically that first example because with the infamous guy that doesn't look like anything Mega Man in the center. Laser grid makes me think of VHS boxes, which makes me officially old. Oh my gosh, no, same though. Same, because let's go back to laser grid. Yeah, a lot of these you would see like associated with like technology, electronics. This would be like the VHS box, or this specifically reminds me of like my dad had like a CD cleaner, and the box that he kept it in had this design to it, right? And you have a little bit of Tron over here. Oh my god, the floppy disk back when it was actually floppy. Yeah, it's not just a 3D printed save icon, you guys. There used to be something called a floppy disk. And there was a time where it was actually floppy. I actually didn't, like, have access to these. I had the ones that were, like, hard plastic. I showed my students an episode of Ray Bradbury Theater, and the sets were monochrome luxe with those hints of Asian styling. Yeah, that's sick, isn't it? Unfloppies your disc. I think we would have been a different society if we went the Laserdisc route instead of the VHS route. Yeah, I think so. I think so. Baby, right round. This one, living in the new wave. Isn't this like related to the one that's like, it is always morally correct to steal from Adobe? This one too, what is this? Non-grid laser grid game art? Oh, these are all games. Okay. So you got Barbie, you have G.I. Joe, Gateway to Apshai, Winter Games, Jumpman. Yeah, they all have this like glowy feature to them. Not just a grid, but like a glowy effect to them as well. The VHS. Right? There's like a little bit of shine to everything. A little bit of glow to everything as well. So yeah, this one also seems pretty related to the monochrome luxe that we were looking at as well. Right? This use of like horizontal and vertical lines a lot. See, this one uses a lot more. Oh, this feels so nostalgic to me too. Oh my gosh, this reminds me of like a doctor's office. Like there are times where like me and my mom would be waiting. Like as I'm like recounting all of this, I'm realizing that my mom literally took me everywhere with her. Like even if she had a dentist appointment, like she would bring me with her. But I remember like waiting in like waiting rooms that kind of look like this, right? So yeah, I kind of see the relation to like monochrome looks as well. Oopsie. But yeah, so what is this? Oh, it's a market. Oh, cool. So you can kind of see how they would replicate those cool glowy lines with lights as well. So very cool. Oh, Schnackery. Oh, what is this, Namco? Oh, cool! This is so cool. Man, we used to be a society. We used to be a society. But yeah, those are a couple of examples of the designs of the time. So you have your monochrome lux, your Memphis Design, Memphis Light, and Laser Grid. And now, let's talk about the artworks. Let's talk about Neopop and Neo-Expressionism. So, once again, these both feature artists that both had roots in street art. Time Out Arcade, exactly. Let's start with Neo-Expressionism first. So, as I had mentioned with Memphis Design, that was a reaction against like minimalist interior design. So similarly, Neo-Expressionism was kind of a rejection of like minimalism and conceptual art. We did go over this when we were studying the 1970s, where like I do kind of vibe with conceptual art depending on what concept it is that they're going into. But conceptual art is art where the medium and like the physicality of it doesn't matter as much as the idea around it, right? And then with minimalism, this is the one that I'm like a little less like into, but this is one where like what you see is what you see. Oh, Schnackery, what's up? He's playing with the freaking bird toy again. He's like, what's wrong? Every time he plays with this bird toy, he just like yells. I don't know why. Like, he never does this with any other toy. It's always specifically this bird toy that he'll bite down on it and then he'll like yowl and just be like, eh. And my theory is that like it's his friend and he's sad because it's not moving. But then again, like cats don't think like that though. Cats don't think like that. They think like my prey isn't moving. Why isn't it moving? Alright, anyway, if you hear him yowling again, it's because of that. My cat perks up hearing Schnackery. I apologize. He's just, yeah, it might be his hunting instincts, right? But then, like, in the wild, if you hunt something and you start yowling, wouldn't that attract other predators that would, like, want to eat your, the prey that you just caught, right? So I don't know. I don't know. Or maybe he's trying to show off to us. Maybe he's like, look what I hunted. This plastic bird. Thank you for the big emote. Meanwhile, my boy yells when the prey isn't moving and when the prey is moving. He hates both. Schnackery wants you guys to come eat. Maybe. Maybe. Schnackery, do you want me to eat the bird? Okay, now he's ignoring me. Anyway. He's ignoring me. Alright, so minimalism, this is the art movement where it's like what you see is what you see. The focus is on the material itself. It's almost the direct opposite of conceptual if you think about it, but it's like the material, the art itself is what you should be focusing on, not the person who made it, not the concept behind it, right? So this is a rejection of that. Oh wait, Neopop is also kind of a rejection of that, but Neo-Expression is a rejection of that. Of like, no, art should be based on the familiar, on something that you can grasp, right? Something that you can, something that's figurative. It should have like, something like, you know, whether it be flowers or a pyramid or Frida Kahlo or a face or a skull or a bird. It should have something that is recognizable to it, right? She wants to share. One of my dogs loves playing with the other, but the other is afraid of toys. Aw. Pickles, hello. Are those your legs on the podium? Yes, I found them on the side of the street. Do you like them? Schnackery, what's up? Alright, give me a second, Cubs. I'm gonna see what's up. Maybe he does want me to eat the bird. Okay, I'm back. Schnacker just wanted to leave. We've been wondering, there's someone's legs? Oh goodness, the fact that you specified there's someone else's legs, girly pop, what? Their legs. If they're in Babinka's possession, they are technically her legs. Exactly, exactly. Exactly. Alright, so yeah, Neo-Expressionism was this rejection of minimalism and conceptual art, where it's like, no, art just needs to be a little bit more straightforward so that we can also relate to it. And there was also this focus on well, it's called Neo-Expressionism, so of course the focus on expressiveness instead of like accuracy and anatomy and figure. You definitely see that with a lot of Jean-Michel Basquiat's work. And then a lot of these works involve vivid colors with bold, raw, and rough movements to portray intense emotions. And sometimes, and I think this is what I like a lot actually, is sometimes it's deliberately ugly to shock the viewers out of complacency. So some notable artists from this movement are Jean-Michel Basquiat, Julian Schnabel, George Baselitz, Francesco Clemente, and Anselm Kiefer. Like I said, the one that I kind of more so focus on was Jean-Michel Basquiat. But we also have, oh, now I'm forgetting which one is which. I believe this is Julian Schnabel, who their work incorporates like a certain texture to it. And if you zoom in, you can actually see that it is broken ceramic. He actually paints on top of broken ceramic. You also see it with this one, right? These are like ceramic plates that they like broke up and painted over to incorporate this like texture to it. I always call it composition gore. It is, like I said, like at first I didn't really like a lot of Jean-Michel Basquiat's work because it seems so like grotesque in a way, but I'm starting to appreciate it a little bit more. Because with all these works, you kind of see, kind of similar to like abstract expressionism, where like you can see Jackson Pollock's like movements and like the energy that he kind of puts into like his paint strokes and his paint drips and all of that. You can kind of see that here, where like you can tell exactly like what they were doing. Like you can tell how much energy they were putting into the brush, into like their movements, right? They weren't just moving their wrist, right? They were moving their whole dang arm. Right, you can definitely see that with this art as well. I believe this one is which one is George Baselitz? I believe this one is George Baselitz. His hallmark was painting figures upside down. And then with this one, like, yeah, it's very expressive. It's almost like impressionist with like how you can see, like, look at the brush strokes here. You can see that they're very long. They're very like kind of all over the place. There wasn't any concern with like covering and like hiding all of these like little splotches of pink back here. They just wanted paint on the canvas, you know? It's very expressive. There isn't a concern with like making sure it's like anatomically correct, but just that like you can see the energy and the emotion that goes into it. And I believe this one is Anselm Kiefer, where they were, first of all, these paintings are incredibly monumental, very large, but a lot of them kind of like painted, a lot of these subjects were kind of like relating to this complex relationship between, I believe this person was German, so the complex relationship of like post-war Germany. Right, Almontes, hello. These rule. I love neo-expressionism. I'm a new fan. I'm a new fan. Like before, I wasn't really into it, but now I am, and that's why I want to get into Jean-Michel Basquiat over here. So Jean-Michel is kind of like the classic story of like rags to riches in some ways, where like he did start like from not so much like a well-to-do family, and his family had fully expected him to go into like one of the more like affluent kind of like careers, you know, but when he said that he wanted to be a painter, that's when he like kind of left the household. But he was a big fan of people like Andy Warhol, and he kind of just like painted with so much like expressiveness. Like I said, the emphasis here isn't in being anatomically correct, even though there was a time where and it's funny because this kind of reminds me of Frida Kahlo in a way. There was a time where he injured himself. Jean-Michel like got injured, and his mom bought him a book of anatomy to kind of study while he recovered. So he actually does know a thing or two about anatomy, and he does kind of incorporate it in things like his work on skulls or heads, right? But instead he chooses this very like organic way of creating art, where it's almost like create, like, his part of his philosophy was like, just create art. Like, don't like stress over details. Like, F it with like perfectionism, F it with like making sure that it looks like compositionally balanced or anything. Just put something on the canvas. Like, make something, you know? And it doesn't matter if other people like it or don't like it, just make something. And there's something about that that's so like empowering, right? Especially nowadays with like this emphasis on like AI generated images where like the product has to look so polished, and that's why we're seeing such a like big resurgence into like art that looks like it's amateurish. Like, I keep coming back to this, but like naive design is like becoming a trend because it has such a like human look to it. You got to be kidding me. You know, these like hand drawn, almost like childlike images. Like, there's something charming about it. Similar to this, especially when compared to like the like almost too sleek, almost too shiny, too perfect imagery that is like AI generated imagery. Here, like, you could see kind of like what goes through his mind. He also has this like book of symbols that he always draws back to, and that's why in a lot of his works you see things like crowns, you see things like copyright symbols. These look like they're supposed to be peace signs, right? Like, I just saw like a really cool video of like, I think this one, Basquiat's work ethic. Where it's really cool. I definitely recommend that you guys check this one out. Let me put it in the chat. Aesthetics usually move away from what is perceived as cheap and worn out, which is often applied to manufactured works, and yes, now AI art. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny because like what we're seeing with a lot of these art movements, like throughout time, is that the art is always reacting to other movements. So I'm trying to remember where abstract expressionism here. Abstract expressionism started to get really big around the 1940s. So, you know, your Mark Rothkos, your Jackson Pollock, right? Where the whole thing about it was to show the process of making art. But then people were reacting against that with pop art, where pop art was like, no, you need familiarity to ground the viewer, right? And then people were reacting against that with minimalism and conceptual art. And then now we're circling back to the 1980s where it's like, no, you need the familiarity. You need something for people to kind of like grasp onto, right? And it's not that any one like movement is right or wrong, but it's kind of like, I kind of see where people are coming from with either side of it. So yeah, like now it's funny because like someone had asked me like, oh, so what kind of like things can we expect from like the 2020s and the 2030s? I feel like it is going to be more of this. It's going to be more of like neo-expressionist, maybe even like Dada, because we're reacting against to like the like curated AI art, the manufactured works, as you said. So I think that I like that. I think that's cool, and I think that's why like I'm getting so much appreciation for Basquiat, because his work also, just from like, even without knowing his background, even without knowing like the story behind like how he made his art, like it's like even just glancing at his art, yes, it's kind of grotesque, like the way that like there's all these like lines, the yellow teeth, the like bloodshot eyes, right? But then there's also like this energy that you get from like all of the, like, you can imagine him like going through with this paintbrush and he's just like hatching and hatching and hatching and hatching and hatching and hatching. Here these look like scribbles made with like maybe either marker or like some kind of like colored pencil or something, or even pastel. Yeah, neo-expressionism, Peg School, exactly, right? Where like here you could see like how much he's like digging into the canvas with it. You can feel exactly his process with making this, right? Which is funny because that does kind of harken back to Jackson Pollock, you know? Another thing is like his use of color too. You're seeing a lot of like primary colors here. I think the video that I had seen earlier, the work ethic one, goes into how like it's just fresh paint out of the tube. There's no mixing. Maybe there is a little bit of mixing on the canvas itself, but he just takes out paint and puts it on the canvas, right? There's no time to mix. Like he needs those ideas on the canvas right now. Yeah, this video is cool because it also goes into like, sometimes you see like a lot of words in some of his compositions, and it's just like his train of thought, which I think is so cool. It's like the what's it called, like what's the other word for like train of thought? Stream of consciousness, right? I don't know if you guys have ever done those exercises when it comes to like creative writing where it's just stream of consciousness. Just write what you're thinking right now. Process of painting Gunpla? Oh man. That's what a lot of his works feel like. His works feel like a stream of consciousness. And I think the highlight of that is like apparently at one point he met Andy Warhol, who is like his idol, his hero, right? He met him and then he went back home to his apartment and within 2 hours he made this painting of the both of them. And then he immediately like ran back over to like the cafe where they were having lunch and showed him the painting. He showed Andy Warhol the painting and Andy Warhol was immediately like, "Oh my gosh, you're so fast." like how did you make this so fast? And I think for a lot of people, like I said, I was kind of one of those people that kind of just wrote off Jean-Michel Basquiat because of like it kind of has that kind of like naive design touch to it. It looks like it's kind of unrefined, childish, but there is like, for one, like it's impressive that this looks like Andy Warhol. Like, he did this in 2 hours and it looks like Andy Warhol. It has like his features. Like even though it looks like it could be like scribbles, it's almost like when we look at digital art where you can see the brush strokes and it almost looks effortless to that painter, but it must have taken them like years to get to that point, right? Senpai noticed him, exactly. It takes a lot of skill to make a painting look effortless. I'll say that, right? So yeah, it's just cool for that reason. Like he like within, if you asked me how I felt about Jean-Michel Basquiat like last week, I would have been like, he's okay. I'm personally not a fan of his work. Like the way that I feel about Jackson Pollock, right? Where it's like, I get it. I get his like why he's so well known and what he brought to the realm of art history, but he's not like my cup of tea. I went from that to being like, oh, I love Jean-Michel Basquiat. I love the energy in his works. He's the greatest, you know? So yeah, that's neo-expressionism. We went from minimalism and conceptual art to neo-expressionism. And then we also have neo-pop art, but also I'm hearing Schnackery. He's yelling again. I'm gonna go get the door. Okay, Schnackery's back. He's back in Pog form. God, that cat gif is so funny. Because that does feel like how Schnackery like is. Alright, so the next art movement that we're going to be looking at is neo-pop art. So, it's funny that there's already a neo-pop art, considering that pop art was still kind of happening during this time. But pop art had its roots more so in, can I find it? The 1950s, really. The 1950s as kind of a reaction to, like, abstract expressionism, where they were using kind of that same idea of neo-expressionism, where, like, you need something familiar in order to get the viewers, like, to grasp it, right? Reaction to an offshoot of abstract expressionism and utilize recognizable popular imagery in order to critique it. So very similar to that, pop art would continue on into the 60s and 70s, especially with Andy Warhol. But now there was neo-pop. And then I kind of just took this quote directly from the aesthetics wiki because I feel like it did a good job of like just summarizing the difference between pop and neo-pop. So neopop harkens back to the use of pop culture in consumer products, but while classic pop art often maintained a cool mechanical distance from its subjects, neopop frequently embraces and exaggerates the kitsch, the sentimental and the commodity-driven aspects of its source material through the act of appropriation. Yes, Battle Crackers, that is MJ with bubbles. So this is, these two are examples of art by Jeff Koons, who is still alive, by the way. He actually he's still making art to this day. And he is someone that is very divisive because he makes art that kind of like aims to, like it says right here, that it embraces and exaggerates the kitsch, meaning like stuff that is like almost overtly popular. Like it's almost like you're latching on to like what you know is gonna sell. And in some ways that does kind of like devalue kind of like the spirit and soul of the art, if that makes any sense. Because it's almost like, it's almost like transparent with like how much this feels like a money, like it's made with the intent to like make money or to be popular rather than the intent to express oneself. So that's why he gets a lot of critiques. But also some of his art, in my opinion, is just really cool looking. And I think that means that I'm just a slave to the I'm just you know, my taste in art is I'm a simple bear. If it looks shiny, it's cool, you know? I'm a slave to the commodity. If if that makes sense. Because he did make a cool art piece recently called Split Rocker. I actually can't wait to see it. It's in the new LACMA building, the LA County Museum of Art. It looks like this. This isn't the LACMA building, but this is just kind of like a show of like what the work is. Basically, it's like two rocking, like, not rocking chairs, but like two like animals, creatures. But they're like kind of split at the middle and it's like topiary. And like apparently when you like go and see it up close, it looks really pretty. So like from an aesthetic point of view, I'm kind of a fan, but I can also see why there's this critique against him where it's like, oh, you're kind of just you're not making art for the sake of like expressing yourself. You're making art of like, so you can like make money or get popular, you know? So like I get it, but it's also like, well, you also kind of have to promote yourself in order to get your work out there too, right? But yeah, again, lots of nuance to it. So yeah, that's the art of Jeff Koons. And then in a more positive light, Keith Haring is someone who is a lot more kind of like positively viewed. But he's also kind of like in this genre of like neo-pop art. So, but his feels a little less, I don't know, like capitalist focus. Like his actually does feel like he's like expressing different parts of his identity. But yeah, notable artists include Keith Haring, Jeff Koons, later Damien Hirst, Takashi Murakami, and Yayoi Kusama. But at this point, Yayoi Kusama was already making art way back into the 60s, but she's continuing to go with this like polka dot like theming that she has, which is really cool to see. But yeah, the deal with Keith Haring though, so he was also someone who got his start with street art. He was also drawing things with like these simplified figures, which made a lot of sense for street art because you didn't have time to have like, you know, if you're making like a cool OC and you want to tag the streets of New York with it, it can't be too detailed. It has to be like only as detailed as it really absolutely needs to be. So it made sense for it to be like something nice and simple, right? Something that you could just break out the Posca markers, draw your little guy, and get going before the cops get there, right? But then that also became kind of his like hallmark. That kind of became his style, so to speak. And yeah, like overall, like because of this like recognizable style mixed with also these like really vibrant colors that are just so 1980s, he became kind of a household name. But also another reason why he's like well known too is because like his career was kind of like an explosion. He popped off like within like the early 80s, but then by the late 80s he was gone because he had passed away due to complications related to AIDS. So once again, like these consequences that we had talked about at the very beginning of the stream, they're even touching into the art world where we're also going to see this when we go into the 1990s and talk a little bit more about like certain pieces of conceptual art. But this hits pretty hard. This hits the gay community pretty hard. This just hits like in general pretty hard. So yeah, this is the work of Keith Haring, gone a little too soon. And this is one of the works that kind of like touches on that too. This is an unfinished piece that will forever be unfinished. You might have seen this going around on Twitter quite a while back, where it started kind of like a Twitter thread of just like art with sad backstories, and this is kind of one of them because like this is very indicative of like Keith Haring's career. Of like you can see his symbols, you can see how much artistry he has in it, but ultimately this piece is never going to be finished because he was taken far too soon before his time. So yeah, right next to that though, one thing that is not often known is that both Keith Haring and Andy Warhol made computer art. And I'm a big fan of this. Like, this looks so, like, whimsical. Doesn't this look kind of MS Paint, right? But with, like, a sense of refinement that you can only... Like, a sense of style and refinement that you can only see from, like, Keith Haring. Or something that you can only see from, like, Andy Warhol, right? So, as I had mentioned before, computers were a thing dating back all the way to the 50s, but it wasn't until the 80s that the personal computer was a little bit more of a household thing. So the increased accessibility of personal computers as well as inkjet printers, this is another technology of the time, led to newfound explorations of the medium. So you have these Keith Haring art pieces that were made using the Amiga. Same with this one, an early computer, the Amiga. So both Andy Warhol and Keith Haring both made art using that. And it was cool because that just meant that they were able to kind of play around with the different, like, art programs that they had back in the time, right? This is actually a picture that I took from the LA County Museum of Art when they had a exhibit related to early internet art, which I thought was really cool. So there were all these cool, like, monitors that were set up, and you got to see, like, different examples of, like, all this, like, computer artwork. So this was made by Andy Warhol. As you can see, that this is actually, like, an image of Warhol, but he's just playing around with the different, like, settings. It's almost like playing around with KidPix, right? If you guys remember that program. Yeah, the ASCII fish. Yes, we're gonna get to that as well. But, like, this just reminds me so much of, like, KidPix, where, like, you get an image and you just play around with it, right? Like, you play around with the controls, you play around with the colors, the patterns, and you end up with a piece of art. And I just think that's pretty cool. This is another piece of work from that same exhibit that I had mentioned. This one is by Tracy Venola, and it's called Little Egypt. And look at this. It's cool because, like, it almost feels like clip art, but they're also incorporating, like, certain iconography that you associate with, like, computers. Like the big trash can over here. This, like, text over here. The pointer, and yet it's also juxtaposed with, like, ancient Egypt, right? It's like Horus is holding the pointer. True Memphis design, exactly, Battlecrackers. The original, the OG Memphis design, if you will, right? So yeah, it's a cool juxtaposition of those, where it even says, like, welcome to Macintosh, but you also have these, like, ancient Egyptian figures, right? The original Memphis. Good night, Bink and Chat. Thank you for stopping by, Matthew. Thank you so much. We're probably going to end soon after we are done with this section. We're going to do Time Guesser, and then we're probably going to call it as well. So thank you for being here, and have a good nap. Have a good sleep. But yeah, this also includes 8-bit art, because, like, this is the beginning of, like, early video games. You did also see 8-bit art. And then you also saw things like Susan Care's Macintosh icons. These were actually kind of like the beginning of me getting into pixel art, was me trying to replicate this in Animal Crossing New Horizons. Because you know how you can, like, make custom designs and stuff in Animal Crossing? I remember trying to, like, imitate this, and I was like, oh, actually, this is pretty straightforward. You just copy the pixels, and that actually got me into pixel art. And then finally, we have ASCII art. So for those not familiar with ASCII art, it's basically art that you can make on, like, a notepad, on, like, a Windows notepad, or just a simple, you know, like, notepad, like, program on any computer. But if you put certain characters next to each other in a certain way, it can make art, right? So you can see that this is, like, a slash and a backslash, and then, like, underscore, underscore, parentheses 0, but it makes the eye of a fish, right? Like, once you know what shapes you can make with just typed letters, you can make art. And I think that's really neat. The rise of clip art. For 4 easy payments of $19.99 plus S&H, you can have access to this 4 CD-ROM set of clip art. You're gonna love my nuts. 100% necessary for your video game FAQ to be taken seriously. Exactly. How else are people gonna follow your tutorial on how to get Mew from underneath the truck next to the St. Anne if you don't have ASCII art of the Pokemon logo? Right? Maybe this is something that I would want to, like, explore as well. Like, how to make ASCII art, right? Like, it seems like it's a little too advanced for my small bare brain, but it'd be cool to get into, right? It'd be cool. Thriller night. Can we talk about Ringo Starr's 500k MS Paint art? I had no idea that he did that. Wait, Ringo Starr MS Paint art. Oh my gosh. This is crazy. Let me add this here. I don't know if it's from the 80s though, but look at that. Most likely this is probably like more so like 90s, 2000s. But this was just the first thing that I could find. This is the first thing I could find from Googling Ringo Starr MS Paint. Oh, 2005. This is from 2005. My favorite is Your Baby. I read this as Yeah Baby, like a la Austin Powers. Yeah Baby. Oh my god, that's glorious. So this is 2000s art. But that's pretty neat, right? Very psychedelic, very Ringo Starr. Yeah, baby. But yeah, with that, that is the 1980s, everybody. We looked into the current events, we looked into the pop culture, we looked into the fashion, the car design, and the art movements of the 1980s. So with this, let's see if our knowledge of Time Guesser has gotten any better, or if we've learned nothing. So let's go ahead and do Time Guesser. Thriller, thriller night. I know it's decades later, but it fits so well. It does, it does. Alright, let's do this. And also let me make sure that raids are paused, because we're pretty much at the tail end of things. Alright, let's see, what the? Why are they watermelons? Why are they watermelon heads? Okay, Canada, US. Okay, so it's one of those. Maybe this is US? And this is baseball, definitely. I can't tell too much from this picture, though. But there's a lot of watermelons next to a watermelon. It's the most beautiful thing I've seen in my life. There's nothing else, huh? Unless this was like a big event. Well, obviously it's a big event, but I don't know nothing about sports, so... They're using their melons. When were watermelons in style? I don't know, this could be quite avant-garde. It could be Dada. Watermelons. I might have to just take a guess from this one. Let's say that this is... Let's just say that this is... where is the stadium? I actually don't know where the stadium is here. What are the billboard ads? Let's take a look. The thing is, like, all of it is kind of, like, hard to see. I think that's State Farm, you know? It's kind of hard to, like, make out. Because everything is, like, pretty blurry. This looks like... I was gonna say Olympics, but no, I don't think it is. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. So maybe, like, anywhere from, like, the 2000s to the 2020s? Let's say 2016? Oh, here. I don't think it's Yankee Stadium, but that's kind of the best guess I have. Alas, nothing defunct or very dated logo. Yeah, 100%. So let's say 2016. Okay, so this is Blue Jays versus the Tampa Bay Rays in Toronto. Fans wearing hollowed out watermelons. In the mid to late 2000s, the watermelon hats were a good luck tradition for the Blue Jays, and the Tampa Bay Rays won 10-9 with 12 innings. Ah, okay. So we weren't too far off. It was still East Coast. And it was within the 2000s, albeit 2009. So that one was a little rough, but alright. Let's see where else we are. Sony. We got some rickshaws here. Huh. This feels like Southeast Asia, right? But I don't think this is like Philippines, because I think we would see more so like tricycles. What are these flags? Could this be Indonesia? Because I know that Indonesia and Poland basically have the same flag but flipped, right? Mid to late zeros. We're the watermelon years. There you go. Sanyo? Be gone. Yeah, lots of Sony. I'm thinking maybe this is Indonesia? I wouldn't know where. Let's take a look at the fashion. We are seeing some patterns in some bigger hair, so maybe 60s, 70s. I can't see any like cars too well though. Actually, yeah, we're seeing some boxy cars. I kind of want to say 60s. Let's say Indonesia. Indonesia in the 60s. Jakarta, maybe. Yeah, there we go, Jakarta. And only 2 years off. It's the early 70s. Very nice. Oh yeah, Jakarta. Nice, nice, nice. Cool, cool. Oh, nice. We have a newspaper. The Atlanta Constitution. Okay, so Atlanta. Maybe Atlanta, Georgia. On me. Take on me. Atlanta, Georgia. Nation's leaders joined thousands for Dr. King's funeral here today. This is 1960. Oh, when did he die? 1969? I know it's late 60s. Oh, 63. Never mind. Never mind. Wait, you thought? 68? I want to say 68, right? 63 was JFK, yeah. So it's funny, I'm actually going... Also, hello, Baxter Crook. I'm going off of Mad Men. Because I remember, like, they are reacting to everything that's happening, like, in the 60s. And I remember the MLK thing happened, like, later in the series. So that's why I'm like, it has to be late 60s. So yeah, I want to say, let's say 1968, Atlanta, Georgia. Spot on! Spot on! Thank you for the tips, everybody. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, we only need the year, luckily. If it was down to the month, oh, I'd be messed up. I'd be screwed. A man reading a copy of the Atlanta Constitution headlining the morning of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in front of the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta ahead of the funeral service commencing. Ah, there you go. Alright, cool. Let's see. Okay, I'm seeing a bowler hat. This one, ooh, that fedora looking thing is making me think maybe 20s, 30s. This definitely feels a little bit earlier than what we've been seeing thus far. The photo quality isn't so bad though that I would say 1910s. Could be wrong though. I'm seeing a lot of people with like the flat caps, but flat caps can also be the teens, right? No, actually, look at the woman over here. So she has a bit more of a conservative like style and dress. So maybe this is 1910s. And then over here, I did also see 17 in the back, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything, right? I was getting my dates mixed up. August 28th, 1963 was the March on Washington. I see. I see. I'm actually not sure with this one. Let's see. There's something about the bowler hat that feels very English, though. So we could do London, 19... Let's say 1919? Let's see what happens. No, we were way off. American Red Cross War Council Chairman Henry P. Davison Center, standing with Italian Red Cross President Count della Somalia left, and Colonel Robert P. Perkins at Rome's Termini Station after arrival to conduct an inspection tour of wartime relief operations. And we were only a year off. We were only a year off, and I was kind of just going off of like what the woman was wearing here. The guy on the train is smoking like a chimney. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We didn't do too bad. Location, we didn't do too good, but year, we were almost on the dot. So let's go to the last round. Ooh, it's so pink. Wait, why is it so pink? That's Trump. Why is the whole thing pink? There's no way. That has to be edited, right? Like, this has to be an edited picture. It just has to be. Washington Monument, Trump presidency. Why is it so pink? Like, Why is Trump pink? The question is it his first term or his second? That looks like Trump from the back, right? It's not just me, right? Alright, Washington Monument. If you can see it from the distance, then maybe it's like here? Wait, how far away is it? It's like right there, so maybe over here? So the question is, which term? That's first term. Maybe it was a Wednesday. Why is it so pink? He's not hunched. He's slightly hunched. Oh, wait, you're kind of right. He's not as hunched. But why is it so pink? I would say first, much more stable walk. Ah, okay, good eye. Good eye on that. So anywhere from 2016 to 2020, right? Let's say 2019. Or maybe it's... Well, are they wearing a mask? No. I was gonna say, like, maybe it's 2020 because you're not seeing anyone else. Right? So maybe 2019? Because, like, if no one else is here, I don't know if this would be a popular park or anything, and no one's there, then maybe it's during the COVID era. But this guard isn't wearing a mask. So let's say 2019 next to the Washington Monument. You're thinking 2017, 2018? Let's see. Oh, it was second term. So, Trump photograph boarding Marine 1 in an infrared camera. Infrared photography captures light beyond the visible spectrum, causing foliage and grass to appear vivid pink, while skies deepen to a surreal blue. Oh, interesting. My president would never use a mask. Oh my gosh. But still, we got the location pretty good, right? Pretty good. And we still scored into the 40K, which is always the goal, right? So very nice. We did good. We did good. And you guys helped. Thank you so much. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. So yeah. Alright, so I guess we have learned a couple of things through all of our decade studies, right? Infrared cameras would make cool VFX, right? Yeah, kinda BS. Kinda sorta. Definitely. You did help. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun. All right, what are we moshing to? I think I'm gonna go ahead and call it here. What are we moshing to today? POV, you're a bee. Yeah, thanks for wait, for a second I thought this was a new dank miss. I was like, wait. Can we mosh to Any Way You Want It from Journey? We could. Any way you want it, that's the way you need it. Any way you want it. Deeny, deeny. Famous Filipino singer. Nice, nice, nice. Alright, let's do it. So for any new students in the chat today, we have our end of stream tradition, which is our end of stream mosh pit. All you gotta do is once you hear the music, go ahead and start spamming your favorite emotes in the chat. And I'm gonna make your little stream avatars fight each other. There's no correlation between how many emotes you spam and who wins the mosh pit. It's RNG and it's not rigged. And during that time, I'm going to be deciding who we're going to raid into. So once you hear the music, get to moshin'. Any second now. Ah! Open up the pit. Any second now. There we go. Alright, good job, everybody. Good job! Good job! And it's not rigged. I keep telling you guys. I keep telling you guys. Anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be doing pixel art. Isn't that exciting? We're going to be pixel arting the buddies, the friends, the cubs. But thanks for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed this decade study. I hope you guys come away with it learning a little bit more about the 1980s. Right? Right? So I enjoy researching this stuff. I enjoyed presenting this stuff. I hope you guys enjoy learning about this stuff. But with that, we're going to go ahead and raid into a fellow bear. We're going to be raiding into a moon bear named Jiro. We're going from a sun bear to a moon bear. They are currently playing Arknight's Enfield right now. And they are looking really fun. Thanks for the stream. Thank you. Thank you. They say it's rigged. I don't know who said it, but they will say that they gave me a bad deal, so I win bigly. Alright, let's go ahead and raid out. I thought I fixed the command. I thought I fixed the raid command, but I guess I did not. But anyway, there's one of your raid messages. I hope you guys have a good morning, afternoon, and evening. And as always, I'll see you guys when I see you guys. Bye-bye.